Today is a regular meeting of the Fairfield Board of Education. In attendance, we have Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Fattabine, Mr. Convertito, Ms. Kennelly, Mrs. Brand, Mr. Liu, Mr. Carey, and I know there's Mrs. Gerber. If you could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on our agenda this evening is a presentation of the Technology Education Curriculum grades 7 through 12, and I will turn this over to Dr. Rosado.
Thank you, Mrs. Iacono. That was a wonderful award ceremony. We just had a tough act to follow, but this evening we are really proud to bring you the Tech Ed curriculum for grades 7 through 12. It's been about 2 years in the making under the leadership of Mr. Chris Samuelson, who's the liaison for technology education and a teacher here at Ludlow High School. One thing that is special about this presentation is it's the first of many to come that is a full program review. So basically what you're going to be seeing tonight is the extent of the technology education program from grades 7 through 12, which are the grades in which we offer it. I hope you had a chance when you came in this evening to take a look at the wonderful student work that's in the lobby. The teachers spent some time today bringing up some student work that's really outstanding, very special. So if you didn't get a chance coming in or didn't happen to notice it, be sure when you leave this evening to walk through the main lobby and take a look at the unbelievable work that the students have produced through this program under the guidance of the teachers. So Mr. Samuelson's prepared a presentation which he's going to walk you through, and following it we'll be very happy to answer any questions you might have. Chris?
Thank you, Dr. Rosado. It's a great pleasure to be here to finally bring this complete program review to you. We have 24 curriculum pieces that are part of our program, and I want to say thank you for all the support we've had. I really want to thank the Board of Education for supporting us over the years. I would like to thank our administrators that we all work for, Central Office Administration, for supporting our program. It's truly a pleasure to do this work with what we think in our department is dynamic, life-changing, giving you life skills that will last for your whole life long. So we do, as the slide says up there, we do put pieces together. We join different things. It's almost like the synthesis where we take all the different pieces they've learned and they're combined together in our classes. And we hope to show that to you through the student work we'll show you up front. I would like to begin with the next slide, and I just want to briefly say I want to really thank these 13 people, including myself, but the 12 others. We have an outstanding technology education staff. Worked 24 years. This is not my first system I've worked in, and I got to tell you, these are professionals. They know their knowledge, and they're passionate at reaching kids and hopefully changing them and moving them forward in their passions to pursue things that they desire to learn. So, if I could just have a moment to have my teachers who are here stand up, I'd like to recognize you just briefly. Thank you. I want to thank you all for the work you've done. And it's been a pleasure to work with them. Well, technology education. We are changing our program. We have gone from what I would consider, skills that we just measure one skill at a time. And we are morphing this into 21st century skills where it's more of we take all of the things necessary to create, to design, to implement the design. It's real problem solving. And so in doing that, we incorporate the measuring, the analysis. There might be some math involved, there might be some science involved. We apply those concepts in what we do. If we're taking apart an engine, we're using micrometers measuring to 1,000th of an inch. If we're in the wood manufacturing area, we have precise sets on machines that have to be made so the tolerances of those projects can go together with a precise fit. The students have to be able to do those things. So no matter what area we're in, we have these high-end skills of analysis and measuring, and they're implemented in what you've seen and witnessed as you walked in through the door. We believe the subject matter we have right now is an application, as I said. We help apply all that learning that the core courses use, and we have a place we can put those things into practice. It's experiential, and when I say experiential, the kids are working with real tools, real machines, computers with professional level software, able to do things that are astounding to me. What we have been able to take and implement into the program is really cutting edge, and I believe we have a state-of-the-art program in our areas that we do teach the kids in. The professional level of tools, they allow us to take these kids to places. And our students, we do care for them, and we do want them to get the best education they can. And in doing that, we want to give them skills that can take them not only now, but into the future. And I believe we do that. And we are preparing them not for what has been, but for what will be. Our curriculum, we are broken down into two main areas. The middle school, all 7th graders take a exploratory course. We serve over 1,500 students in the middle school level between the 7th and the 8th grade courses. The 8th grade has 3 electives. The high school, grades 9 through 12, we have all different levels, sometimes mixed into a class. We could have 9th through 12th graders. We have genders mixing together, so we have different classes with different levels of different kids all the time. We have kids with needs in our classes, along with kids in AP, all at the same time. We meet the kids where they're at, and we offer a program with the ability to do that. The progressive sequence is important to me. We have not just a place where you show up and take a class, but we have a method and a way we progress through these courses to offer you more and deeper and more enriching classes that can take you to skills that will get you prepared for college. It might be prepared for an entry level in the vocational area that they're studying. And we have, I think, an awesome, awesome program. The grade 7 curriculum is an exploratory curriculum. We explore areas in manufacturing, construction, communication, and transportation. These are basic levels, and they get the kids interested into what these different areas offer. Grade 8, they're allowed to choose 3 electives, and they can choose to take this, all of them, one of them, they have their choices in these. Some examples of student work. These are things that have been designed by students. They go through the problem-solving process to come up with what they're going to need to complete their work. And they are sometimes a little higher end. We have a solar car. We have these machine mechanisms. So they have to figure out how they are going to make these articulated mechanisms move. And some more projects that are utilizing their skills with the tools they have at that level to create things that they can utilize, that they can help understand their world with in a little better way. At the high school level, you can see we branch out. So we have 6 areas. We have sequencing classes in computer-aided design, graphic communications, construction and manufacturing, transportation technology, computer technology, and robotics. This is our sequence of classes. An example of one of the draft pieces we put together for the curriculum. Now, these curriculums have been available on the web for the last week to be viewed, but this is part of the work we went through. We have objectives, we have essential questions, we have assessments, we have standards that are from the state, some are referenced to national standards, and some are referenced to some other states where we actually acquired some excellent standards that applied to our program. We're going to start out with our computer-aided design. Computer-aided design is broken into 3 areas for us. We have architecture, which many of you know. We've always had a strong architecture program in Fairfield. We also now have a pre-engineering program and also computer animation, much like you have with Avatar. This is not just for cartoons, but this is using the computer-aided design environment, which is the same basic platform. We're talking about parametric modeling that I could talk to you later about, but that is where we get into all the data behind the scenes and how we build these different items, whether it be a house, a part we're going to manufacture, or an animation. So these are student pieces up here you're going to see. I want to take a look at this. This is what the level we are able to get the kids to. This is a rendering. We're able to move light. We're able to go through the house. We're able to take the house apart. We're drawing in 3D now. We move things in 3D. To see what we do, if you don't think that's professional, well, it is. And this is what we're able to offer our students with our great teaching staff we have here and with our awesome ability to utilize programs. I'm just going to flip through a few of these. You're going to see some architectural. That's architecture up there on the top left. It's someone's modern design. We have the ability, we actually do teach the frame structure. Models will be built on those. Students go through the process to figure out how houses are still constructed, but also how we can take these designs and go to that next level. Interior work, it's a major portion of architecture. We now can go into the room and we can furnish it. We can cast light where the sun's going to be coming up throughout the day, going down at night, and put the different elements in there. The bottom one, I know that I have been looking at Rick Strid working with the kids. He's had a group of students working on an outdoor restaurant, a beachfront restaurant. And so I think we're going to go for a tour through one in a little while. But video wasn't rendering, but that's okay. But we have some walkthroughs we go through in these houses and the buildings. Connor Benton, special kid here. He's going on to RISD right now and Rhode Island School of Design. And what we have enabled students like Connor to get to is to realize and fulfill their potential. That's a rare thing, I think, in education, that we can do that, and we're able to do that. Some very excellent engineering drawings. We're able to, you flip through that one, Rick. In engineering also, trebuchet. We're taking some physics concepts in here. We're applying the math. We're applying all of those elements where we're going to make an estimation on this. We're going to finish this out with a final test. And then we're going to modify to see if we can increase the potential for this device. So if we want to see where things cross over the curriculum, our classes are starting to really emphasize more on this endeavor to say, we want to be a place where we can take the knowledge we've learned in other classes, apply it, and come out with a product. Now, it may be a test thing like a trebuchet. It might be an engineering design. It might be somewhere else. Okay, right. I want to take special note of the top right and bottom left. These are produced on a rapid 3D prototyper. Through some grants we utilize for keeping us up to date with the Perkins funds, we've been able to purchase these printers that print in plastic. So the students make their designs in engineering, and they actually get to see them come to life. So we have an ABS plastic prototyper in each one of our CAD labs in our high schools. where the students can take their engineering and take it and not only make it, but then, as you can see, these have been energized and motorized, and we can now test and go into that next level again. Good, right? Animation, wherever you dream of, we can take you to the animation. I want to show this because we're showing a process here. Hand sketch. Then we go to a basic rendering and then a final output. Okay, right. Again, another figure. We're going through a clay model. And then some excellent like manipulation with the program, and we come out with some more products. You're going to see the morphing of these are done in the Mudbox or 3ds Max or Maya, one of the programs we have for animation, to create the different effects that are going to be going on in the animation realm. To show you a basic level, beginning level animation, we have a short little clip here, and it's something that you may have seen before, but this was not existing before. It was not copied off something. The student created the, I guess we'll do the song and the dance here. Okay, back to it again. Oh, and we'll skip that other one. We'll go right to the next one, the AP Bio and CAD Joint Project. So another place where we've crossed over in the curriculum. Rick was working with the AP Bio teacher here, and they wanted to go through an osmosis description, and so we So Rick has teamed up with AP Bio, and the kids in Rick's class understand how to do some CAD. Kids in AP Bio understand what they want to get out onto a graphic format. Well, now we combine it together. Okay, Rick. Graphic communication. So CAD's wrapped up. We're going to go on to graphics. And graphic communication, we have a fully functional, nice, beautiful Mac computer lab. We use Adobe Professional Software of InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop to produce things like you may have seen out front or anything you've seen up here. We do in-plant kind of printing along with, we're really moving towards design and moving towards web application and personal device kind of design. Okay, Rick? Some examples students have done in bumper stickers, in screen printed mirrors, heat transfers. Okay, Rick? Posters that we have. Our former winner, Brandy. Let's see. Brandy Stawicki, who just won an award up here. She designed the pig. So she has some fun. We morph and have some fun with the kids. Go ahead, Rick. Transportation technology, energy, power, transportation systems, small gas engines, automotive servicing. These are all encompassed in transportation technology. We start out with small gas engines, transportation technology devices, and then we go into, after you have some experience with that, the tools that are used. We're going to go into the auto servicing at the upper level. Some examples, we have lifts in the classes, we can do brake jobs, we can do wheel changes, tune-ups on the cars, we have computer diagnostic equipment we use for scanners. The kids get to bring in their own cars, we work on teachers' cars. Okay, go ahead, Rick. We're fully outfitted to do most anything we need to do on the basic level at least. Okay, Rick. Wood manufacturing, be the designer, be the builder. We want people to be engaged. We want students to be engaged in their learning process. So in wood, examples, we're starting off with the basic. We learn basic joints. We learn how to utilize the tools effectively, efficiently, in a problem-solving way. So they create the design. They make their design. We grow this as time goes on. Students start making more complex things where they have to figure out ways to make things utilizing more tools in more complexity, using more measurements, more layout, with more precision. It's an entry-level student on the left, and if you morphed her 4 years ahead, one of her counterparts, Taylor, she designed this dining room cabinet for her mom and presented this to her mom in June when she was all finished with it. It was a beautiful moment to see her mom with some tears in her eyes. Okay, Rick? Grandfather clocks. John Cassay, he's a pro with these, and I got to tell you that there is so much in the thinking that goes into these, in the skills that goes into these. A student who can make this can go into cabinet making and start out. Okay, Rick? Examples of some of the work over at Ward. Computer technology. Pat Disney has run an excellent program in computer technology with hardware, software networks, diagnostic equipment, and repair. We have a computer technology lab that we can service, learn about computers, and figure out what's going on with them. We are using an A+ certification type program that is CompTIA certified, and if you know about computer repair, that is the standard for which government computer repair is based on. Robotics engineering. We take it, our newest class, the last one we're going to go over tonight is robotics engineering. And robotics engineering is a semester class for us. It's an area we'd like to build because it's an area that we produce a high-end problem solving, applying things across the curriculum, again, with math and with science. Okay, Rick. You can see all of the different parts that go into these, the pneumatics, the gears, all the motors. We have to figure out how to use these and apply them in a way in which we can produce something that's going to function. Okay, Rick? Competition at the end. Student design competition. They lay out the game. They figure out what they want the problem to be solved, and they go ahead and they have the opportunity to go ahead and have a competition. So they've designed it, they've figured out what they wanted the game to be, and now they have to go compete. There will be a winner, even if there's a little cheating going on in this one, I guess. If you can't win the real way, we'll try it the other way. Okay. So to wrap up here, I want to thank you for listening so well and for paying attention to what our program really has been about and what it's going to, where the direction we're going to. The different areas, I think they've explained very well why we meet not only the needs of our student today, but where we're going to go in the future. And again, we develop 21st century skills. I really believe we do. I know that we do. We talk about it in a real world environment. We give students the opportunity to make choices for careers potentially, or for paths that will take them along to that next step. Our curriculum is a standards-based curriculum, and it is meeting needs of all students. Again, we service all our students. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the Board of Education for listening to us, and it's been a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
Dave? Hi, grab my umbrella because I know I'll forget it later. It's under that chair, that first chair. Thank you.
Hi. Stephanie.
I'm Sarah.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
You too. Okay, great. I'm going to open it up for board comments and questions, but I just want to say this has been one of the most enthusiastic curriculum presentations I've seen in a really long time, so thank you. I can see that you truly enjoy doing what you do. Does anybody have any questions? It's going to be hard for me to see tonight, so I'm just going to kind of move down the table in order, and Mrs. Kennelly, I'll put you on the hot seat first. Do you have any questions?
Just a few. First of all, just want to thank Dr. Rosado for the opening memo, just as one brief aside of immediately addressing the questions you know we'd have in terms of comparative of the curriculum and the budget impact. And thank you so much for the presentation. It really was exciting to see. I was at Tomlinson earlier today speaking to their faculty about Odyssey of the Mind, which is all about this problem solving, and it's just exciting to be a part of that. Couple of quick questions. One, in a bit of my ignorance, is there any aspect of this that the students at the alternative high school have access to?
I am not connected with that particularly directly. So I have had students.
Yes, I'm curious.
Kids from the alternative high school who have interest in the tech education department, we try to work with the high schools and their schedule, and we will transport the kids back to the high school. We don't have the capacity in our building, but we do work with kids to make sure that if it's something they want in their continuum of service, then we can get together with either high school, whichever high school they're assigned to go to, and they go back to the school to participate in them.
Okay, that's, I was hoping, because I would certainly think that'd be a way to get them excited about education, give them some skills. I'm curious about the extent to which you're able to work with local businesses. I would think that would be such a gold mine of potential to work that in. That's not that the curriculum needed something added to it, but between GE, local automotive places, and others, that would just be a fantastic opportunity for the students as well, even for potential scholarships. I was wondering if there's any tie-ins with that, or is it pretty self-contained?
We don't have any articulated agreements with anyone like to move students into a shadowing or anything role. I would love to. I would say our time, I'm a full-time teacher along with everyone else, and so there's no other designated person. That might be something that I would love to do in the future. We do have students, however, that we do link to people that we know have employment opportunities for them. So if there's somewhere where they can go along with someone that we know, yes, we try to hook up the kids into those environments.
No, that's better.
We had a sort of an advisory board that has met on occasion for technology and consumer science and the business department, and these are folks from community businesses, local businesses who come in, look at our curriculum, help give us some guidance and so forth, but we don't have the kids necessarily.
Well, I would definitely think they might have some opportunities with the golf course mower after what we were hearing at the RTN meeting last night. And then just a final quick question is that I assume that students, that when you were laying out the curriculum model, that since students often will have summer experiences, et cetera, that they are able to fit into they don't have to go in terms of prerequisites, they can place into classes that are further along on the continuum?
We have taken students based on their experience and moved them up to the next level that would be appropriate for them. Yeah.
Well, just thank you. It was wonderful to see it.
Thank you.
Mr. Convertito?
Yeah, just a couple. One, again, let me thank you for your enthusiasm in presenting it. It's obvious you enjoy what you do, and it's great to see in faculty and staff. A couple of quick questions. The Connecticut State Department of Education Educational Technology Plan Template. Is that different than what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that it doesn't coincide. Again, my item, I guess this is through the chair to Dr. Rosado, because you had prepared some planned or anticipated some questions. Item number 3, are there any budget or facility implications for this new revision? I guess it's also for Mr. Samuelson as well. Are there equities between the two programs? And Mike, my question stems again from your answer to number 3, and also the lead into the alternative high school and how are we, that's a concern of mine, because I think the technology program is a great avenue for them, and I think we may be leaving them somewhat behind. So my question on number 3 is, how do we make this equitable for all of those students in the 7 to 12? Because number 3, supplies allocated by, I guess it's the first line. The program has been funded through the years with supplies and materials allocated by each school. Are we leaving it to each school to allocate those, or do we have certain standards by which they're being allocated?
There are a couple of places where, in the budget, where funds go to the tech ed program. One is through the program implementation accounts, which you're well aware of that, and you see the numbers there for supplies, materials, as well as professional development and curriculum development. Another key piece is the Perkins grant, which goes strictly to those 3 programs that are outlined here. And then the bulk of the materials and supplies do come from the building allocations, and Chris works with the administrators, and they work, from year to year in terms of what's in inventory and what they need to purchase and so forth. But the programs are virtually identical across both of the high schools and the 3 middle schools.
And then just one follow-up, and maybe it can be prepared for the next meeting when we're going to vote on this. I'd love to see a wish list of what you'd like to see going forward, because given our RTM meeting last night and wanting to get started as soon as possible, knowing and anticipating what you're looking for in a 3 or 4 or 5 year down the road as far as equipment, I think that's great information for us to have now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Single space, double-sided. Mr. Liu.
Again, also, thank you so much for this presentation. It was very, very exciting. A couple of questions on just putting together this curriculum. So we haven't had a change for 13 years. Is that what I understand from what you've put together? And when did you start working on this new updated curriculum?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Thank you. And can you explain a little bit about how you got to where to build this
Sure.
exact curriculum, briefly?
We took an inventory, really, of where we were at currently. We had already begun to change some programs internally without formally adopting new documents, because technology does not stand still, and so we had to create avenues for that new technology to be in place, not to leave our students behind. The teachers, we convened together, so all 13 teachers worked together, and then the middle school and high school split off subsequently. I was part of both of those different tier meetings, and we have worked the last 2 years, depending on, sometimes we spent some curriculum time after the school year ended to devote a week solid just straight to working on these documents. We referenced whatever standards were available that we could find. The state of Connecticut has drafted new standards. Those are currently waiting to be adopted, because I think the state legislature was busy getting something else done this last week that those are just about ready to be adopted, of my understanding. So we also searched national standards. We went to industry standards for things. So we were looking at whatever we could find to back up what we do and to move us forward to that next step.
Then to follow up on that, do you think for the next meeting, or somewhere between now and the next meeting, you could provide us some literature on what those standards are?
Sure.
So we could take a look at it and see for ourselves what you were trying to do? I guess I'm especially interested in the state standards and the industry standards, but it would be great also to see some comparisons so that you were trying to understand where Fairfield would fit as you tried to craft a curriculum. This question is through the chair to Mr. Rosado. Just in point number 2, and this was very, very helpful, this little summary here. I'm asking this question tonight sort of based on some of the things we learned about the math curriculum, which is, it says at the bottom of point 2, the Curriculum Coordinating Council, which is what exactly? and the parent focus group that was held for this particular one. Can you tell us a little bit about those, please?
Yes, the coordinating council is basically a representative, the leader of each of the 14 departments.
Okay.
Myself, Anna Kataya Leonard, Karen Parks, and other administrators who want to be a part of that. But that's the core group. So it's the 14 program leaders led by myself. We have goals that we work toward, and as the curriculum is, and Mr. Samuelson presented the curriculum to us, the presentation you saw this evening, as well as the documents, we provided feedback back to him about both of those. And then the parent focus group is what we have always done, called, put the word out there, have as many parents come as we can. And some areas are better attended than others. And in this particular case, we were really looking for folks who work out in industry as well, who could give us some feedback on that. And so that was held last week.
And that was last week?
Yeah.
And how well was it attended?
Not well.
Okay.
Three, four parents?
3 parents.
And Mr. Samuelson, and I was at the RTM meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You have a follow-up, Mrs.
Yeah, just a
Kelly?
quick follow-up regarding the parent group, because I meant to go there, and I was speaking with somebody else who did go, who was one of the 3 who is a professional who works in the tech ed field, and he was planning to steal some of your work. No, he was highly complimentary of the curriculum. He's in the process of curriculum review as well. He was one of the parents who went to that focus group.
Thank you.
Mrs. Gerber, do you have anything?
No, just thanks. It was a really great presentation, and my son's in 8th grade at Ludlow, and he's gotten so much out of his 2 years of tech ed, and is really looking forward to next year, too. So thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Dwyer, do you have anything?
Yes, I would join my colleagues in thanking you for the memo and the answer to the questions that I've normally asked. You didn't make a comment about staffing, and have you seen a growth of students wanting these electives, and is there any potential, what is the going forward staffing requirements or that you might have? Through the chair to whoever can answer it.
Yeah. Currently, there are 6 teachers at the middle school level and 6.2 high school teachers across both of those schools, and there are between 250 and 350 students at each of the high schools taking the courses at any given time. And I believe there has been growth in the program
There has
over the last couple of years.
The last 2 years, we have seen an uptick in across the board each of our programs, students wanting to enroll. Sometimes they are smaller classes, but we have seen a percentage increase. At Ward, we saw up to 10% increase last year, and we had the request for more staffing this year because we have seen that increase occurring. And we have an increased need for staffing, yes.
But at the moment, you've not had to tell a student they couldn't enroll. You've had space.
We have cut classes the last 2 years because of a combination of, they were lower enrollment classes, but we did not have enough FTE to cover everything either. And we're talking small amounts, 0.1, 0.2, but still, those are small amounts.
Second question, if I could. You mentioned standards that Mr. Lute commented about. Are there benchmarks where you could say, how is our program related to our reference group, and or if our long-term goal is that our school system ranks among the best in the nation, does our tech ed program rank among the best in the nation? How do you measure that?
There's currently one, for a few of the areas that we offer, there's something that the state vocational assessment exam, and those are adopted, those are state exams for 5 areas we would be testing in, and those would be referenced against we were in the top third. That's where we stood last year. So we were 48th out of 160 schools.
Okay, thank you. Last question I have is relative to the internships. I know that students at the end of their senior year, if there's no issues around whether they'll graduate, will do an internship. Do you find that your students don't have places they can go because we haven't recruited architects to take them, or manufacturing plants, or could we focus on that so that your students could have a outside-the-school experience?
I would love more focus, but we have some students that are placed in some architecture and some design firms and things like that, some going into some garages for auto service and things like that. So we have some students that are placed out in those things. Would we like more focus on that? I think that would be a positive thing for the students as well as our program.
Thank you.
Mr. Carey, do you have any questions?
Yes. I too like to thank our team and the teachers who came this evening in support of the curriculum. This is fascinating. It's a big jump from wood and metal shop when I went to school here a few years ago.
I made a shelf.
And one of the things that I saw that I'm really pleased with is the move to the A+ in the computer technology. That's a transferable skill that our students can walk out of the school with, and it is a job-ready transferable skill, which leads me to my question. I see that some of the things in your presentations, I guess to the chair too, whoever on the staff best suited to answer. I see some of the things in your presentation were kind of feeders into college experiences. You had a student that went to RISD on some of the architectural work. For our students that might not go on to college, can you just give me a couple brief highlights on where some of the things that they're doing here might translate into marketable skills like the A+?
I can tell you specific examples of some students we've had here. They've, through our wood manufacturing program, upon leaving here, have had the necessary requisite skills to gain employment at cabinet shops. And these are going into high-end cabinet homes. And I had one student come back last week, and he explained that he maybe spent some time at the alternative school actually last year too. And by just having us for 1 year in woodshop, and he only spent 1 year with us, he went to that job interview, and one of his first questions was, what skills do you have, and what do you know what to do with them? And he was able to go through the shop. He got a job that day. So I have some other kids that have transferred their skills. One became an operating engineer. He walked through graduation. He said, what am I going to do, work at Walgreens all my life because all I have is a straight D+, maybe C- average. He was a smart kid. He ended up taking most of the tech ed classes we had to offer here. And he passed his entry-level test into the state the state-level operating engineers union to get into the program. His first year, he earned $50,000. He dug the 10-inch cable going down from Middletown down to Norwalk. And so based on the skills he learned here, he was able to pass the test for Ohm's law, and he knew the measuring, and he knew how to analyze some things. And so JJ's doing pretty well right now. In fact, he bought a house in Fairfield after just, last I heard anyway. So we do have kids that are non-traditional, that college is not going to be the avenue that they need. We need people that can think and problem solve and become citizens who are contributing back to our society. I think our program does a really good job at giving those base level skills. I see kids' confidence, I see their countenance change when they leave our room with one of the items you've seen out there in front in the auditorium. When they make something, if you've ever made something yourself, you know, I made this. You can't take that from them. They will live with that. They know it's real, and those are things that are the intangibles that become tangible in my mind for them.
Thank you.
Mr. Fadabine, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I guess a couple comments and a question or two. I also want to thank you for your presentation. I was particularly interested in the presentation. I thought it was very good, and I enjoyed it particularly. The question I have is that this is a pretty comprehensive curriculum, in my opinion, and it's good to see that it offers a great deal of many things. And you have a list of the classes that are offered. Do you offer all these classes every year, or are they?
It depends on enrollment, I would say.
But they're available every year?
They are available for every year.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I was particularly interested in, happy in a sense, of the extensive use or classes you offer in computer-aided design, which I think is an important skill and technology to learn in today, as well as the new course in engineering design and robotics. I think that's timely, and my guess is going to expand.
We hope that it expands. We're looking for gaining more student interest in that. That's one of our big pushes that we really want to move on.
Yeah, I'm going to see it. I know I'm pretty confident I'll see a 20 there.
We're actually starting that process now. Even though this is going through the works right now, we're already starting on that.
All right, those are my only comments. I think it's a good curriculum, and I reviewed these documents. I was very impressed with the breadth and scope of a lot of the
A lot of hard work by the guys I work with. That's what I'll say.
Mrs. Brand, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, please. At the risk of sounding redundant, thank you again. And I was curious as to how you plan to stay current. I mean, technology changes so quickly.
That's a constant challenge for us. As we go more computer-based and programs become ever more in need of the processing speed, the memory, that's going to be a continual thing we're going to have to manage, and if you want to know about a need, we're going to have to address technology advancement in our computer-based areas is the one thing we're going to have to stay with to keep moving forward. The programs, as you can see from what you saw on the slides, to develop those renderings and all the analysis that goes on behind, or the data behind the scenes, requires a pretty quick computer with a lot of processing speed. So those will be continual. I work with Nancy Burns. We talk often, and there are legitimate needs on areas that are outside of tech ed, so we have to manage how we allow those in the district.
Please forgive me because I do forget. Obviously, it's been a long time since this was updated. When would this be coming before the board again for review?
Scheduled, I believe, 7 years.
I guess with some kinds of curriculum, science being one, and this clearly being another, and this may be actually for the board for further discussion, this might be the kind of curriculum that we might want to take a little bit more regular, more frequent look at to give you the opportunity, because this changes so quickly. 9 years from now, I mean, I can't even...
I think 7, but even so,
7
years
excuse
from
me,
now.
I apologize.
It could be 4 years from now,
Right,
and that's...
exactly. I think the nature of this is different. I think what you're trying to do as it's going on is making the modifications on your own, because I'm sure you do. I mean, I can't see it how you would do it
That was
different.
being proactive. We address those annually as much as we can. We talk together as a group of teachers and say, what are our real needs? We assess those as much as we can. I work together with Mr. Coyne and whoever our other administrators are to address those as much as we can in a proactive way.
Yeah, I think even if it's annually with the budget, in terms of budget needs, I would as a board member greatly appreciate it to make sure that we're doing our best to accommodate you, and so that you can make those kind of improvements.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And the other thing is, do we have any connection with any universities? And as well as, I know we mentioned businesses, but I know a lot of, I have a kid who did one of them, took a class, and he's this year, thankfully, has a job as an engineer. But it was Miss Audette and the class that he took with her that was it. That was the spark. So, you folks really do leave a lasting impression, so I thank you for that personally. But I guess where I'm going is, are we making those connections? Are we in contact with universities?
We have not made those connections.
Okay.
I think there might need to be some resource personnel-wise in the future for career and technical education in total that would assist in doing that. That's time-wise. I do teach 5 classes.
Oh,
no, I know. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that if we were to address that properly, I think as a district, it's one of those things we could look at and say, how do we address this properly? I would love to get some agreements. if, as appropriate, yeah.
And again, my last question is, as board members, is there anything that this board or I can do for you as a board member to help you with internships, or is there anything more that you think we can do for you?
There's always more we can do. I'm not going to say there's never more. There's always more we can do.
But I think in the same vein as Mr. Convertino, I want to see where we'd like to go with this and anticipate that so we can make sure that we're helping you lay the groundwork.
I would love that. A long time ago, this town had something called cooperative work education and some job shadowing kinds of things. This was years ago. We're going back a long time. I don't know if that's something that would be in line with that or not. I'm open to all different things that we can connect kids. Anytime we connect kids into their passions, they succeed.
Right.
So I'm all for that.
And again, thank you. I appreciate you answering the questions too.
All right, thank you.
You have a question? Yes, please.
Could I just ask a quick question? Do you have any kind of senior showcase at the two high schools with all of the work that the students have done?
Mr. Casey is our prime mover and shaker with the showcase. It's not really a senior showcase, but it's the culminating year's work of his wood shop. And he has brought in the Connecticut Post and given awards out. He's done a great job, and as an overall group, we have not done that.
Okay.
And I would love to, it's one of those things, as we move forward, I think we do need to honor the kids' work in a special way, and I am not disagreeing with you.
No, absolutely.
That's a great idea.
We had our AP art showcase at Fairfield Ludlow last week, and that was amazing for me. As a music person, I don't really see what goes on in the art department, and so I saw some of students that I know, their work up there on the projector, and I don't know, I think that students in the high schools would definitely benefit from seeing the work of their classmates. That was really impressive.
Well, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
that's something I'd love to do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's excellent feedback. This has been great. Thank you. I want to thank you. I did stop on my way in. We have some extremely talented students, and it would be great if we could get a big showcase going. I think the public would enjoy that too. So, great job. We will be voting on this next week. Mr. Convertito, you have one last question.
I just have one follow-up question, and you can chalk it up to my mother being a VOTEC teacher for 30 years. At what point in time, or do we not say to a student who shows skill in the vocational tech, saying maybe this is not the right place for you, and refer them to a VOTEC school in the state? Or do we not do that? Do we not work properly with them? And maybe Dr. Tuttle can speak more to this. I know there's been a lot of transition with the VOTEC schools, and talk about moving them into the actual high schools and doing that. And I'm just wondering, how far do we go with this programming before we are replicating in a service that the state's already doing?
We're not really building the trade level skill in these kids. Some of them get there. I'm not going to say that it's not our intention to be a trade school. We don't have the time to devote to that. Those students at the trade schools are typically in a class for weeks at a time, and then they go to their academics for weeks at a time. In our current format, with the period by period by period change, it's not possible to really become trade school. And could I direct someone there within a certain length of time? Also, VOTEC schools require you to enter at 9th grade. They may take you as a 10th grader, but with repeating some of the trade portion of it, and that would be it as far as my knowledge goes. So, yeah.
Again, we're starting this program in 7th grade, right? Would there be any indicators between 7th and 8th grade that would help us guide a child to maybe a more appropriate venue?
There may be. I have not pursued that, and yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll see you next, 2 weeks, or whenever we'll meet next.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of April 10th, 2012. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Convertito, seconded by Mrs. Brand. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the meeting minutes? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Next item on our agenda are student and committee reports. If the board remembers, we will take the student reports, and then I'll simply ask if anyone has a report. If you don't, then we'll move on to the next item. So first up, Ludlow High School, and I want to acknowledge a certain star of a certain play that just musical that took place. You were hiding that from us. I saw your picture in the newspaper.
Oh, thank you so much. At Fairfield Ludlow, we are in AP testing week this week and next week, so that's a little busy. We have juniors and seniors doing that and a few sophomores. Report cards were issued a few weeks ago. Honor societies are having their induction and their graduation ceremony, so we're wrapping that up. Seniors and juniors are prom planning, and that's just around the corner, so that's very exciting. Seniors are also all making their final future and college decisions. We have college shirt day on Monday, and everyone's wearing their shirts. So that will be very fun to see everyone representing their schools. Internships are also starting next week, or the week after next week, sorry. And seniors are planning, our senior club is planning graduation, so we're getting ready for that. As far as athletics go, our teams are doing very well. Just 2 examples, our baseball team has a record of 9-6, and they have a game tomorrow. And girls tennis has a record of 13-1. They're doing very well. And they have games all week. And they played New Canaan today. And the athletic department is actually, we're having a used shoe drive. So they're collecting shoes, and we're sending them overseas to children who need them. As far as activities around the school, Beauty and the Beast was 2 weekends ago, and it was really successful. It was very fun for everyone involved, and we had a great turnout from the community, which was wonderful. Thank you. Student productions are next Thursday night. Those are productions that students write and direct and cast, and the students are also in the cast. China trip, our students just returned 2 weeks ago. They had a very fun time. I heard lots of wonderful stories. And our French exchange students also had a great time at Fairfield Ludlow. I saw a lot of friendships really forming. So that's all.
Thank you, and congratulations again. Does anybody have anything they need to report? Excellent. And now, Dr. Title. Pressure's on, short and sweet.
Right. I would like to give you a report on what's happened at the legislature with the latest education bill, but it just happened. And I'm not sure I have all the details. So what I'll do is next week, I'll get some sort of good summary of it. You may get one from CABE. I might get one from the Superintendents Association, and maybe other documents, and I'll send it out to you. And to the extent I can sort of point out areas of that might impact us, I'll try to highlight those, because some really don't apply to us, and others might have a significant impact to us. So try to put that together for you in a written form, but it's so new, not even sure exactly what transpired there. So I'll hold my report till a later moment in time.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is old business. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve policy number 5119, student discipline, which is enclosure number 2 in your packet. May I have a motion? Moved by Mrs. Brand, seconded by Mr. Dwyer. Is there any board discussion? Mr. Liu. Before I go to Mr. Liu, Mrs. Kennelly, do you have any opening remarks since this did come out of policy?
Yes, it's in looking at the student discipline policy, which we have spent a fair amount of time with. It falls into 2 basic categories. Pages 1 through 10 of enclosure 2 involve the definition of suspension, in school, out of school suspension. And that's pretty straightforward, getting us in line with the state. It's pages 11 through 21 that involve a separate issue, which is the implementation and the use of the hearing officer for all expulsion hearings. So what you're looking at here, that's what the policy committee has spent a great deal of time on. Both of those, pages 1 through 10, was not at all controversial. That was, again, getting us just in line. It is pages 11 through 21 that we had a great deal of discussion, but I'll open it up for questions at that point.
Right. And is it of the opinion of the committee that we approve this policy with the hearing officer?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Liu, you had comments or questions?
Thank you. I just had one comment. It was on page 21, section D. And I think there was some discussion at one point that we want to, as a board, we want to be aware, if, let's just say, for an example, we had a large amount of expulsions, since we're not going to be actively involved in the expulsions in terms of seeing all these cases, that we at least be notified if there were like a large amount, so that we could say, we could possibly meet and put that on the agenda as what's going on here. And I'm just wondering if once a year is just too little to get a summary of what's going on in our district in terms of expulsions. And I'm wondering if we could be open to, making it either a quarterly thing or putting it on the pink sheet with the school population numbers, just so that we have an understanding of where we're at with, and I mean, I would defer to Dr. Teitel as to maybe some suggestions of where we could do this, or maybe it's just like we do with the buses, that we get routine updates so that we know what's going on in the district.
I'm going to actually ask Mrs. Kennelly to respond to that, since they worked on this committee. I know that they spend a great amount of time debating the length.
We brought up that exact same question as well, and one thing that Dr. Teitel explained, which made a lot of sense in terms of our picking the date May 1st, is that often the expulsion is the result of accumulation of various incidents. Sometimes it's just a single incident, but other times it will be a bit of history, so that it is often far more in the second semester than the first semester in general. That is how we arrived at the May 1st. We also, while it is vague, it was also very deliberately chosen on our part when we said at least once every year. And there was that aspect that we were entrusting to the superintendent, that if the numbers were greater than expected earlier than that point, that he would know that we were expecting to hear at a date prior to that. So again, the wording is a little bit open-ended and vague, but it was done in consultation with Dr. Teitel in terms of what the board would expect, that we would not expect to hear May 1st, oh, by the way, we had 10 last year and we're at 23 right now. Case in point. I mean, that's not that that would happen, but so again, that was very deliberately discussed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
And my only, I understand the reasoning for that. It makes a lot of sense. And yet, the other side of it is, well, what's a lot? I mean, you just threw out a number 10, and I think that is a lot, obviously, but 6 seems like a lot too. Is 3 a lot? And everybody has different opinions about that. Maybe it would be better to, instead of saying once every year, we say 4 times a year, so that even if Dr. Teitel is busy with so many other things, we're going to get that report. We're going to be able to say, oh, looks like we've got 4 here. As a board, is that a lot to us, or is it normal?
Mr. Convertito.
Just let me follow up on that, since it actually was my wording. The concern of the committee in doing that was, these being a policy guideline, was what's high to this board may be small to another board. Okay. We discussed putting a threshold in there. The other concern with a threshold is, as much as this stuff is privileged and so forth, if there's a riot at this school, okay, and 8 kids get, and people are going to know that 8 kids all of a sudden disappeared from campus, okay, how do we protect that privileged information, okay, by all of a sudden now having a threshold met, and then we have to have a report done, okay. So there was some give and take on that. There was also some give and take on what should and shouldn't be included in the report, and what we finally concluded was it has to be done at least once a year, but any board member at any point in time can request that report. And that's information that's open to any board member to be requested through the superintendent's office. So given that it has that pressure relief, that any board member can say, hey, we want to see, or that information would be freely available. This is just sort of a baseline. And and if we want to go above a baseline, we're open to hear that. It was sort of give and take in the policy committee meeting.
Excellent, thank you.
Just quickly, just so there's clarification, I actually wasn't suggesting that we have a threshold. I was using it as an example. I was trying to say, if we did 4 times a year, the threshold, then it's just information, and there is no threshold. We would know 1, we would know 10, we would know 3. But if you're also saying that we can request it at any time, then you know, I'm comfortable with that.
Thank you. Mr. Fattabine, you're on the policy committee as well. Do you want to offer
Yes, I am.
commentary? Do you want to offer commentary?
I'd like to offer commentary as well as an amendment.
Excellent.
I don't know what's excellent, but we'll see. The amendment is this very section that we're discussing, Section D, on page 21. Often in any report involving students, it may be necessary or possible that certain confidential information may be needed to be discussed. That's why I propose to amend Section D to read, at least once every year, comma, no later than May 1st, comma, the superintendent shall, comma, this is inserted, in executive session, comma, provide, delete, communicate to, and continue with the board, add with, continue with a summary of any recommendation of expulsion and any expulsion hearings, period. The summary shall include conduct alleged by the administration, comma, the findings of the hearing officer, and I would delete general and continue with length and condition of expulsion imposed, comma, if any, period. And if you want a copy of that, I could pass that up to the secretary.
That would be extremely helpful. Thank you very much for doing that.
But I would move that item D be
Is there a second to that motion?
amended in that way.
Seconded by Mrs. Kennelly. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Mrs. Brand.
Through the chair to Mr. Fattabine, is the intent of this to be able to discern why these things happen so that the board then can plan appropriately, do any appropriate intervention to basically use as a matter of prevention?
I believe so on plan. I think it's important for the board to know the nature and content of the expulsion hearing and what was found. Yeah, I think the board would have a different opinion if, for example, it was a drug offense, whether it was half an ounce of marijuana or 3 kilos of cocaine. I think the nature and scope of the occurrence is important to know as a board for planning and for purposes of action that may be necessary to prevent such occurrences or what may need to be done in the district with efforts to prevent them. So we have to know about them and what the extent of them are, of these occurrences are that result in expulsions, which is a very serious offense, in order to run the district, in my opinion.
Mrs. Kennelly, did you have something? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand. No, that's okay.
Just to
okay.
clarify.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And just to clarify that obviously this is predicated upon our approval of a hearing officer as well. I mean, that's part of the reason that we want to, maintain contact with this aspect of the running of the district.
Right. My only question is this legally allowable? Is there anybody that can answer that question?
I believe it is. I talked to Don Houston about it as well.
We both believe it is.
Does our education council believe that this is legally allowable?
When I spoke with him,
Yes.
he indicated that he did not do an official opinion, but discussed the matter casually. And I had discussed with him my legal rationale and cited certain statutory authority where I thought it would be appropriate and permitted under the statutes. And he said here, look into it and get back to me, but has not yet done that. I don't know if he spoke to Dr. Teitel about it or not, but he has not talked to me after our conversation.
Mr. Liu, I'm sorry. It's hard to see with the going down the table like this.
Well, obviously, unfortunately, even though I know we all want to pass this tonight, I think it's important that we get the answer from Mr. Houston, though I have to say I think what Mr. Fatabeen is recommending is a good idea. It kind of goes back to what you were saying, Mrs. Iacono, about wanting to be involved, knowing what's going on. It's our duty. I mean, I don't know how this works legally in terms of, personally, I don't need to know even the names as much as I want to know what the incident was and how we're going about dealing with it, so that we do have an idea. You know, if we do suddenly see lots of drug-related incidents, we know that it's something we have to start paying attention to. So I would be in favor of this change.
Can I just ask a procedural thing of the board? If the board is so inclined to approve the policy in its entirety, would the person making the motion be amenable to withdrawing this until we get a legal opinion on just that amendment? We could approve this policy as it is, and we could come back and revisit just that item D in the effort to at least move the entire policy along. Would that be acceptable?
Well, we have a motion on the table for an amendment, right?
I understand that. Mr. Convertito, I didn't recognize you. I'm asking Mr. Fatabeen if he would be amenable to withdrawing it.
I think it would be better to table it to next meeting versus pass a policy that you know may be modified within a short period of time, or that is not quite ready to become a policy. I think it's bad practice to do that. I think if you want to wait to get a legal opinion that is from the board, I don't know, the board's attorney, I guess. Would it be the board's attorney, or would it be the superintendent's attorney? But I assume it's the board's attorney. It has an attorney.
The superintendent, we have an attorney. It would be the board's attorney.
So Don Houston can render an opinion to the board if it is requested of him.
Okay.
And I would like, and
No, that's fair. I just wanted to ask that. All right, so we have a motion on the table. I mean, we have a motion on the floor for this amendment. I guess I'll go to, if nobody has any more comment on the, yeah, there was. Mr. Convertito said.
Can we, if...
And I can go to public comment if we can vote on it up or down.
But you have a motion for amendment that needs to be seconded.
Oh, I thought
I did.
Yeah, Mrs.
Okay.
Kennelly. Yeah.
If I could just discuss that, if
Sure.
my concern is if we want to table section D, then I would ask Mr. Fatabeen to change his amendment to strike section D, pass the policy as it sits so that we know we have either a hearing officer in place or a board member committee hearing expulsions from this point forward, and then we can get the interpretation, legal interpretation on section D and amend the policy. I just don't want us to be in this limbo for another month or so.
That's my
without an expulsion or hearing officer, or are we doing board and so forth. So if he would amend the motion to strike section D, and the board could we get a sense of the body, but the board would pass the policy without section D, then we could always, put in section D as to how the legal interpretation comes through.
this policy has been in place for at least a year already, more than a year. And the substantial equivalent of the policy has been in place for a while now. I understand why, I don't see the urgency to get a specific policies in place if it's not completely ready. So, I mean, I can understand, I don't know why it's necessary to put it in place and not wait 2 weeks to get the opinion and put the complete policy as is in place. It's going to have to be put back on the agenda if you want to add to it, and that may or may not happen. So I am reluctant and don't see the urgency, since this policy has already been in place as it was for quite some time. It's just not a good practice, in my opinion, to pass policies that are not necessarily complete with the belief or speculation they might be revisited to add a feature that is desirable but for some reason left out. I don't think that's good practice.
I understand Board Member Fairley's concern, but in the front section of the policy are statutory requirements for definitions and so forth that I think we need to be compliant with, and I ask that through the chair to Dr. Title if that is correct or not.
Yeah, that was one of the impetuses of this policy, was to get ourselves in compliance. We've been dealing with this since I don't know how long. You know, you can leave the phrase in executive session out and just have it say, shall communicate, and then if it's allowable to do it in executive session, then that's where we'll do it. If it's not allowable, then we won't do it there. You could always come back and re-clarify it, but if that's the only hang-up, I'd really like to get moving on this. This has been in limbo for a long time.
I think, all right, is there any more discussion on the amendment and the amendment only? Otherwise, I'm going to go to the public. Mrs. Brandt?
Yeah, actually, this may be rectified, just as Dr. Title just said, and actually include the specifics in regs, as opposed to specifically written in policy,
That's a good point, too.
so that we could have it as is, and then in the regs, modify the regs, and we'd be ready to go.
All right, great. I'm going to go to the public. Is there anyone who'd wish to speak to this item and this item only, the amendment? Seeing none. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand.
Favor of the amendment?
Yes. Mr. Fattabine? It's hard for me to see. I'm sorry. Mrs. Kennelly, you got to put your hands up high if you're in favor of the amendment. Mrs. Kennelly, Mr. Convertito, Mr. Liu, Mrs. Gerber, Mr. Fattabine, Mrs. Brand. Opposed? Mr. Carey, Mr. Dwyer, and Mrs. Iacono. The motion passes 6-3.
Now you got the whole policy.
All right, so now we need to take up the entire policy. Is there any more discussion on the entire policy? Is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, all in favor of the policy? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Excuse me?
Thank
Yes.
you.
It's a procedural question.
Sure.
I'm a bit confused, and I want to make sure that we're all pretty much on the same page. It was my understanding that if the board wished to have legal counsel on any issue, that it had to go through the board and not from any individual, because I thought that with our board attorney, or if
It was a procedural question that you're asked. Yes, I know exactly.
town attorney, either one, yeah.
Mr. Fattabine had the permission of the superintendent to contact Mr. Houston, if that's what you're asking.
I am, because I know there's a fee included with that. That's
Nope,
fine.
he did. He worked under the discretion of the superintendent.
Yes.
Thank you for asking.
Thought it was better to go directly rather than me be the go-between.
Well, yeah, because I actually thought that would have come out of subcommittee, and again...
Right,
That's where it came
that's
out of.
exactly where it came from.
That's exactly what I'm asking.
He had the authority to do that.
Thank you.
Have Joanne come up.
The next item on our agenda is discussion of the Fairfield Public Schools Food Service Program, which is enclosure number 3. And we
I'm going to ask
have,
Mrs. Fitzpatrick to come up and sit on the end.
Excellent.
She's going to probably be the one answering the questions. Okay.
thank you, Mrs. Fitzpatrick. You want to give us an overview of where you are today?
I had sent you some enclosures.
Yes, thank you.
We had a few issues that I wanted to share with the board. The first one was the concern about pink slime in the food, in the beef products that we have. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what pink slime is. It's really what's called lean, finely textured beef, which is really beef. It's a process of how the beef comes off of the bones, and so I won't go into too many graphics about that. It's an approved item from the USDA. It's not required to be labeled in products. It was found in supermarkets, restaurants, school food, and numerous places. And it first came to light in late February when the media attention really hit. We didn't want to rush to judgment at first. We wanted to hear what it was all about. So doing some research, we decided beginning in April that we wouldn't serve any beef products for the rest of the school year till we could get a handle on what it was. we use beef from the commodity program, and the USDA announced that they were going to offer products with lean, finely textured beef or without. Schools would have a choice, and we chose right away not to purchase any with the lean, finely textured beef. And shortly thereafter, in April, the state of Connecticut Food Commodity Office decided not to purchase any of that kind of beef for the whole entire state, so that was good news. But we're ahead of the curve on that to decide not to purchase it with that. And we did not serve any beef products from April on for the rest of the school year. We made substitutes with cheese and chicken, bean dishes, more vegetarian items and things like that. So that was one thing. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that for me. Or...
Your report, and then I'll go through. Then I'll go to.
Okay.
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 I'm just going to let Mrs. Fitzpatrick run through the enclosures, then I'll go down the table and see if we have any questions.
Okay, so there were a couple of enclosures. One was a statement from the School Nutrition Association. There was a USDA letter, and then a letter that I sent. The other enclosure was healthy food certification. I know that there's some new board members, so I'm not sure how much they know about that. We've been participating for a few years now in this program that's run by the state of Connecticut. School districts must vote every single year whether they want to participate in the program in order to get an additional 10 cents reimbursement from the state for every meal that we serve. And with that, there are a lot of rules and regulations to follow. We've been doing this, I think this is our third year, and in the beginning it was a little bit shaky getting it going, but everybody's pretty much on board with it. It works pretty well out in the schools. One of the things that was of concern was, could you sell items at events? And yes, we can. The board votes on that, the food and beverages, so that you can sell items at different sporting events, as long as it is the actual event, the game, the basketball game, the football game, not just a practice. And during the school day, food has to meet the state regulations. So we've got that under control now. Things that we sell in vending machines, some of the schools do have vending machines, they just have water. There are restrictions on the beverages that we have available during the day, so it's just water, 100% juice, and then approved items. So there is a state list that we follow, and the student groups and school stores understand that now. It also affects fundraising, but fundraising with food usually takes place out of school. It doesn't have anything to do with when a PTA has a get-together. They have Halloween parties and things like that where they may have food, and it's okay to have those as long as it's a gathering, it's an event, an actual event. Okay. There's about 70% of the schools in the state are on this program now.
Thank you. Mrs. Brand, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. What will happen with the food that was purchased or the beef that was purchased? Are we going to take a loss on that? You buy in advance, I assume.
Right. At that point, we don't have any of the beef in stock anymore, so
okay,
it's gone.
Okay, and then I had down, what initiatives and marketing strategies are you using to promote healthy food?
Well, we've been doing some different things. We've done the Fuel for Learning Partnership had a veggie pledge that we signed on to at the beginning of the year, where we feature a sample of the vegetable of the month, and we what I had done was put together some posters and had them printed. They're big, colorful posters that are out in the dining rooms and the cafeterias that talks about a vegetable. It has fun facts about it and nutrition information, and they're very colorful and eye-catching, so that's worked out pretty well. We've had success with some of the vegetables, and some vegetables the kids had never seen before, but we had success with the spaghetti squash. We just did asparagus this past month. We did roasted asparagus, and this month we have eggplant, and that was really a hit, especially with the elementary school kids, so they're looking to have that on the menu, so we're going to add that on. So we also did participated in the Iron Chef contest in October. There were 3 chefs, including our Mr. Wayne from Osborne Hills School, who did some homemade recipes, and that was in conjunction with the Fuel for Learning Partnership also. We've been working together on those things. And it was exciting because there were hundreds of people there. You know, we wondered if anybody was going to show up at all, and then it was great to see so many people. I think there was pretty close to 500, and the kids were really excited about that. We also had participated in the food expo that Fuel for Learning Partnership had. So the food service program had a PowerPoint that was going that showed different school lunches, the different vegetables that we had. We had a food display, and we had samples. So we sampled, gave out samples of vegetarian chili. We make our own homemade nut-free granola and some fruity coleslaw, and the kids tasted that. And I know there was one little girl, she kept coming back for more. I think she was about 4 or 5 years old, and she kept coming back for this granola, so she was so excited about it. We gave her a big, big cup to take home, so that just made her day, and that kind of made our day too. One of the other things that I was excited about that we're doing is we're applying for the Healthier U.S. School Challenge. This is a special award given by the United States Department of Agriculture. Only 2% of the schools thus far in the nation have met the criteria for that. And I've been attending some classes on that and putting together menus and working with the physical education department and nutrition education, because it takes in all of those components. We signed up all of our elementary schools for team nutrition. That's a program under the USDA, so that there's educational materials available for teachers and through the principals if they choose to use those items. I know that we have nutrition education, and they're using a lot of different curriculum, but there may be things here that they can utilize. And so this award promotes physical education, nutrition education, and the nutrition in the cafeteria. And so I've been working pretty hard on that with some of the staff members. We're getting ready to submit the application, and keep our fingers crossed that we'll be able to get that.
First, I want to say thank you, because I've been around a while, and I've seen the shift happen. I've seen something that I really think takes a great deal of thanks, because I'm seeing a partnership which I think is going to have the greatest success for the school and for our students. And you've been wonderful working, I know, with the parents that have been working on this for many years at this point. It takes a while to make things all happen. But I want to compliment you and thank you for that, because I think we've made huge advancements. And I know it's been a huge shift and a lot of work for you, but I do sincerely appreciate it. My background's nursing, and I can't tell you how important I really think this is. I think to that, and you started to segue into just what my next question would be, and do you see this moving in the direction when we will start to correlate what we're giving to our children to eat also with what we're teaching them to eat in terms of the health curriculum?
Yes. the next school year, you probably have read in the newspaper that there's going to be a new meal pattern. This is about the first time in 15 years that the USDA has made some moves in a different direction of more. What we're going to see more on the menus are more vegetables, more fruits, beans, and portion sizes will be different on foods. A lot more vegetables, a lot more fruit, and that will be a requirement that students have to take that. And it's certain kinds of vegetables, dark leafy green vegetables, orange vegetables. So what I've tried to do with the May menu is to start to transition to, gradually get there. It's required for the next school year, but we're starting in a couple of months early. So you see the beans and the squash and the sweet potatoes and things like that are on the menu now, so that we ease the students into it, because it's quite a change, and you have to really do it with baby steps to get people on board with it.
Were you able to tie that in with your purchasing cycle as well?
Yes.
Okay. And again, my thanks, and thanks for your patience.
Mr. Fadby, Mr. Carrier, Mr. Dwyer, do any of you have anything? No? Okay.
I want to thank you especially that this is more than just a lunch program, and that you are working with the entire school community. I'll know that we're a success when we go to Board of Finance meetings and there are no longer a box of munchkins on the table. Thank you.
That's not going to happen. We're too old to change, but we can affect the kids. Mrs. Gerber, do you have any questions? Mr. Liu?
Thank you. Mrs. Fitzpatrick, it's been, what, a couple of years since we instigated the healthy certification? Or has it been a year?
No, a few years.
2 years? I mean, it's amazing. And it's very true. I think you've made a huge steps forward. I know when I was very dogged about that, getting on, and I've seen the changes, and I'm very, very impressed. And what I'd like to sort of say tonight is, what I'd like to put forward to this board is that we get more involved with you, because trying to show you the support, we want to give you the kind of support and guidance that I think is possibly missing, not because you're not doing a good job, but because this is an area that I don't think we're as focused on as we should be. And I think, the pink slime situation is just one of those. I know there was an issue a couple of months back also with some menu things where there was this, people could have eaten pizza all week long, and it was great how quickly you got on top of that and changed it. But I realized then, looking through the policy, looking through the administrative regs, which I don't think really exist, and I couldn't find them, at least if we have administrative regs about this, is that we don't have a consistent input as a board working with you to help give you some guidance about what we are looking for in terms of always keeping on top of and improving our food services. So I think, I do have a few other questions, but my major thing that I'd like to suggest tonight is that the board, and I'll probably make this into a motion in a second, but I'm trying to talk it out here first, is that the board, every year you're going to show us your budget, and I think it might be the same good time to have a set of goals that you can present to us, that as we go on, that you can show us what you've been able to accomplish within a year and what you're going to strive to do in the next year, and that we can also be, can give input through the chair, through the superintendent, to let you know some ideas that we'd like you to see, and then leave it up to you and the Fuel for Learning Council to work together to decide which ones are feasible, which ones are workable, and that you present that to us every year so that you have some guidance as well. I think it actually is, what I'm trying to say is, well, I want to give you the respect, because I don't think that you have that. You've probably been almost like, well, of course I'm doing how can you expect to do something if you don't know what we want? So I guess, let me just make, I'll make that, let's just make that motion right now, that,
Mr. Liu, if I could just
Yeah,
correct you, this is a discussion-only item.
okay, well, we'll leave that then for, I guess, another night? We can't make a motion even though it's a discussion?
You can, if you want to try and get two-thirds to get a motion added to the agenda, you'd have to do that first.
Okay, well, how about that, folks? Let's see if we can get two-thirds. Can we get two-thirds to see if we could put a motion together tonight for trying to have some kind of yearly goals that we could give I'm sorry, you're going to offer some friendly help? I will take it.
I was going to suggest that maybe what we could do is bring this to the subcommittee in policy and ask them to go through that first. That might help formulate where we are and make it a little bit more definitive.
I can offer you this. We review the food service budget every year in June. I don't know that you actually need to get a whole motion to do this. If we could just look around the table and have a friendly sense of the body that the food services group will present their goals and what they've achieved during that, I think that would suffice.
Well, if I may, the difference, I think, is because it's not just about what the food service wants to do, or possibly it's the food service presenting, but also hearing a little bit about what some of the board is concerned about. I mean, if some of us hadn't, I was one of the people who brought this on the table tonight because I was concerned about pink slime. I was concerned about, you know, the menu hiccup that happened. And I think if we're not involved in this as part of the process, then we're not sort of keeping tabs on, just the way we keep tabs on curriculum, just the way we keep tabs on, you know, the different other aspects of the school, bullying, etc. Why wouldn't we also be an integral part of the goals to be set every year? I don't mind if we want to start off, since this is new, putting out a bunch of ideas and then saying, okay, Mrs. Fitzpatrick, please, you know, take these 50 ideas and start working on them and present which ones you think you can do this year. But I do think the board should be allowed to be, have input on what some of those issues concern them. So I actually think, if you don't mind, that that is a very good idea, what Mrs. Brand suggested, is to get this to the policy committee. And we could we bring it back then at the next meeting,
Madam Chair, may I address? I think if the board is patient, they'll see throughout the evening that that issue will be addressed, okay, as far as goal settings and so forth through the handbook and the board handbook that we have drafts of, and I think it'll satisfy the board as far as goal settings for following years and so forth. So if the board would be patient with this, I think you'll see that come up later on in the evening.
I can be patient with that, as long as, yeah. I just want to ask a couple more quick questions on the same issue. Do we have any chicken pink slime in our menu?
Not that I know of.
Okay, because I know that was an issue a couple of years back. And it started with the chicken pink slime, which was the McNuggets and that kind of stuff. Will you look into that for us?
Yeah, we've changed some of our chicken products to whole muscle meat.
Okay, that's great, right?
Yeah, those
But,
kinds of
but we
things.
don't have any other, do we have any composite nuggets?
Yes, we're transitioning out of that, though.
Okay. So I guess as a goal, we might not see those next year. That would be great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Just briefly, Madam Chair, I think the Healthy Food Program is going in the right direction, and along the lines of Board Member Brand's comments about marketing the nutritional program a little bit better. I had the opportunity about almost 3 months ago now to hire the culinary program here at Ludlow to cater an event of about 90 people. And for those who you don't know, and I didn't know until 2 weeks before I had arranged a dinner for 90 people, that Fairfield Ludlow has a culinary arts program that does outside catering at extremely reasonable prices. And in talking with those students, a lot of their frustration was that they were not allowed to submit recipes through the school system to see if they could get them on the school's menu. And I think that that's a great avenue for our kids to have ownership of the nutritional program, and I would ask you to investigate that. And just a secondary plug to that program, for $14.50, if you call in before 11 o'clock in the morning, you can have a meal prepared for 4 people, which works great on Board of Ed nights.
That is actually great to know. Thank you. Mrs. Kennelly.
Just 2 quick things. First, if you have found an eggplant recipe that my children will eat, I would like it. And I say that joking, and yet in all seriousness, I think it would be another way to market the program is, again, I believe all the schools have some form of Friday flyer. I don't know if this is something you can coordinate with the PTA or some other avenue, but the idea that you would get hands-on cafeteria managers saying the most successful recipe of the week that had the best response was this, and put it out in that Friday blast. What a wonderful commentary on the program, and very practical, because that would be something to talk about with my kids, and I would do that in a heartbeat. Eggplant?
I'd order it from the culinary school. And
There you go.
Pick it up.
Even better. But I really think that would be a boon for the program in terms of getting them even eating it more. Then the second concern is you were talking about the portion control, which of course is part of my pyramid. And are you concerned with the amount of food that ends up in the garbage?
We do have offer versus serve, where students are offered 5 components of the meal, and they have to take 3 of them right now. So they only select the things that they want to take. Elementary schools, we have 5 different menu choices, and at the secondary schools, there's numerous ones because we have 3 lunch lines that are operating at the same time. So the students can go through the lines and choose what they want. There's different kinds of vegetables out, or for instance, on a deli bar, they have the different kinds of meats, different kinds of breads that they could choose from. We've modified the toppings to go to more like fresh vegetables, so we'd have things like shredded carrots, there's onions, there's mushrooms, there's sliced peppers, there's lots of other things, right?
Okay, you've actually gone beyond even answering my question. I'm fine. I'm back at my school days where your plate, there was a preset amount of everything put on there, and so I was picturing you're describing the change in portions and getting a whole half plate full of green beans and watching it end up in the garbage, and that would just be a shame. But what you've described has gone beyond what I would have hoped for. So,
okay.
But I really think you should put out those recipes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. As a representative of the students, I say we are also very appreciative of the efforts of the program, although we are a little reluctant to give up all of our pizza all the time. I have a quick question, though. Do you have any recommendations for the organizations in the high school specifically that do not have events in order to fundraise? I know I'm a member of the Class of 2012 club, and we don't necessarily have sporting events in order to sell food. And prior to the policy being instituted, we had regular sales after school, food sales, and that was a big source of income for us, and now that has completely gone. I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations as to what to do in that situation.
Right, that's restricted because of the healthy food certification.
Okay.
And another layer of it would be during the school day. There's competitive food time around school meals, so you can't serve a half an hour before the first lunch shift starts to half an hour after the last one is over. So at a high school, some of the lunches start at 10 after 10, so you couldn't sell anything from 9:40 until after the last lunch shift is over, which is 1:30. Which makes that 2 o'clock, so there's not much time during the day with which to sell.
Days? What about at the end of school?
At the end of school,
Yeah.
because of the healthy food certification, it has to be an event.
Okay.
It's defined.
So there's
that
no
way.
there's no
There's no
way.
way
Okay.
around that.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Brand, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, actually, I Googled this because I have a friend of mine whose daughter had the same question. And what we did is we did find some websites that actually had, or, areas that where you could find recommendations of how to do fundraising without food. And then my only other suggestion is, I'm sure you're not alone if 70 other districts are doing it. So the other suggestion I would have is call the other schools, see how they're making their money, because I understand your circumstance. It is more of a challenge. But I do think it is something you can do because it's a different focus. But I think those websites, actually, I remember did have, yes, it is a shift. You're exactly right.
We actually have that up on our website. There's a whole chart with other ways to fundraise.
Can you, yes, one second. I just had a follow-up on that. Can you sell foods that, you can sell foods that meet the healthy food requirements, or you cannot?
Yes, you can do that, but you have the competitive time.
Right, so if you were to wait until after school, at 2 o'clock per se, well, that's pretty far out there, but you could set up a table and you could sell the correct pizza size and serving.
After school becomes an event.
Okay. Becomes an event, and then
it has to be an event.
Only if it's an exempted.
Yeah, as I remember.
Right.
As I remember, it has to be healthy, but it does. I could be wrong, and maybe we want to ask a Fuel for Learning person.
No.
But basically, I thought it was that you could do it as long as the food was healthy, which means it has to fall into certain guidelines. Maybe later on we can hear from.
Well, we can look. We can look into it. If you could look into it and then just get back to us on that, that would be great. Because my understanding was, for instance, the PTA could sell a pizza as long as it met the healthy food requirement. So if you could provide some clarification for that, that would be great. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next item. We have new business. Discussion of naming the North Stratfield Elementary School wing, which is enclosure number 4 in your packet. Do we have anybody presenting, Dr. Title?
Maybe somebody from North Stratfield.
Is there someone from North? Mrs. Jackson, did you want to come forward?
Before I start, I would like to say that the eggplant was a really big hit, so.
The mic is on.
Right.
Better. I'd like to thank you for giving us the time to speak to you about our teacher, Nancy Hanlon. We really hope to have your support in allowing our 5th grade graduating class the opportunity of naming the 5th grade wing at North Stratfield School the Nancy Hanlon Wing. As many of you may know, Mrs. Hanlon passed away unexpectedly last April, and although she's no longer with us, her spirit surely remains. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and it seems very appropriate for us to have an opportunity to talk with you tonight about Mrs. Hanlon. Mrs. Hanlon was a very dedicated professional, and she touched the lives of many, our students, our staff, and our parents. Mrs. Hanlon was a teacher in Fairfield for 18 years, and we were especially lucky to have her at North Stratfield School for her last 3 years, where she found great joy teaching our 5th grade students. Many times during those 3 years, Mrs. Hanlon told me how much it meant for her to be part of our North Stratfield community. She possessed all the qualities of an exemplary teacher and an exemplary individual. She was a passionate educator who did everything possible to meet all the needs of her students. This even included tutoring many of them over the summer at no cost to their families. Mrs. Hanlon never hesitated to offer her help to students, staff, and parents. And believe me, many of us went to her for advice. Mrs. Hanlon joined every committee possible at North Stratfield. She was the mentor for student teachers, and she truly left her mark on our entire community and probably hundreds of students during her entire tenure in Fairfield. What a teacher writes on the blackboard of life cannot be erased. Mrs. Hanlon was that kind of a teacher. She had an influence on many lives, and our 5th grade students would really appreciate the opportunity to honor her in this very special way. On behalf of our community, I really thank you for listening to our request tonight.
I'm Bria O'Sullivan. I'm a third grade teacher at North Stratfield, and I'm speaking here on behalf of many of the teachers at North Stratfield, in fact, all of our teachers. Nancy Hanlon was an exceptional person, one of those people who made you wish you could be more like her. Sitting in church on the day of her funeral and listening to the tributes paid to her was truly a humbling experience. This sense of being humbled has only increased as her true nature has emerged in the years since we lost her. She was unique in very many ways. She was dedicated, not only to nurturing every child who had the good fortune to be in her class, but she is dedicated as well to their entire families. Parents very quickly got over the stomach-dropping lurch of the phone call from the teacher when they realized that Mrs. Hanlon wasn't calling with a complaint, she was actually calling with a compliment. One parent amusingly noted that she initially thought she had some special privileges with Mrs. Hanlon because of phone calls Nancy made, but in subsequent conversations with other parents, she quickly realized that they too thought they had special privileges. Because of her loving care, students flourished in the positive atmosphere she created in her classroom. She not only touched the lives of her students and their families, but she touched those of us at North Stratfield who continue to mourn her loss and miss her positive influence. She was thoughtful, kind, generous, patient, and extremely humble. She wanted no acknowledgement for the innumerable ways she reached out to help her peers, whether it was to teach a colleague how to use a computer program, mentor a new teacher, or even mend her 5th grade colleague's pants, Mr. Gillen. Nancy was an inspiration to us. And as is so often the case, we're not fully aware of the impact somebody has on our lives until they're no longer with us. Since her passing, so many stories of her generous spirit and exceptional teaching skills have come to light. If we who remain can be half the person that Nancy Hanlon was, our living will certainly not have been in vain. Naming a wing in her honour will be a constant reminder of this inspiring teacher and extraordinary human being. In the words of an Irish author from the Blasket Islands on the west coast of Ireland, Ní bheidh le héad a rís ann, her lights will not be seen again. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very moving. Is there anybody on the board who wishes to discuss any of this? Okay, this will be a voting item on the next board agenda. Thank you very much for the presentation. The next item for discussion is the naming of the Stratfield Elementary School Media Library Center. Is there somebody here to present on that? Okay, we did receive a packet of information in our materials. Does anybody have anything they wish to discuss on that particular item? Okay, the next item of the agenda is the first read of policy number 3901, naming of facility. Mrs. Kennelly, I believe this came out of policy committee. Would you like to give some opening statements?
Well, first we were surprised that there was in fact an existing policy, which is what you see with enclosure number 6 with the blackface type. And it's, as the topic was coming up, emerged with the Fairfield Woods facility, the idea of trying to come up with something a little bit more definitive. And so Dr. Title brought some of this text forward. I did some research as well on what other institutions and what other districts use, and so this was meant to be, to paraphrase somebody else, the start of a conversation on what we thought would be right for our district. We voted to move this forward, but we're very much open to the input of the board in terms of what we thought was in terms of what would be appropriate, and so I'll just leave it at that, because I'm very interested in how the board reacts to what we put in here in red.
Thank you. I'll open it up. Mr. Convertito.
Yeah, I'd just like to predicate any comments, and my hope is that the order of the agenda for the next meeting would have the 2 voting items that we just heard precede the approval of this policy, and I say that only because I don't want the adoption of a new policy to preclude what the submissions were under the old policy. I think that would sort of be a sleight of hand by the board.
That is correct.
Okay, I mean, so the public, there was an old policy. those submissions were submitted underneath the old policy. So I'd hope the agenda would be that they would be voted on before we approve a new
Yes,
policy.
I want to be clear. I want the public to understand that if you're seeing that your submissions do not meet this current policy, we're going to wait to adopt it until after. They go on in the order in which we were taken. Mr. Fattabine.
One comment and concern I would have, I wouldn't certainly like to see a race to name every single building and extension to a building in our school district, and whereas you can't enter a room that doesn't have a name, because you may do that all within 1 year or two, and then you have future teachers that come and future personnel that are exemplary as well, but they're all locked out because every single facility is named. So I'm not sure how to address that, but it would certainly have to be a travesty, in my opinion, to have a race to name every single facility. And maybe you want to put a limit of maybe 3 per year or something, which I think we can maybe discuss, or have some ability to regulate it more specifically.
What some districts, through the chair to Mr. Fattabine, what some districts have is and this is just one sample, they actually have stipulated in the policy a 25-year limit. That the idea that at the end of 25 years, if the name isn't renewed, it's no longer attached in the way that it was. That's just an example of what I did read other districts have to address that point.
That's interesting.
Jump in on this for a second.
Sure.
The idea of a waiting period, one of the intent behind that was a little bit like the Baseball Hall of Fame. That is that there might not be as big a rush as there is often when somebody retires. And so that if you have a waiting period, then you might have fewer requests, which might address your issue, because somebody would really have to have an impact that 3 years later, people would still be willing to come forward to try to name something. You might get fewer requests on that, and you might get less competition to try to name things. But it doesn't specifically, the way the policy is written, there is no limit. But I think that was also part of the thinking of having some sort of a waiting period there. Just input on that. Sorry.
Mrs. Brand.
This wouldn't actually speak to the policy. I believe it would come under regs, and my only recommendation is that each of the schools or someplace we keep a record. I remember when we were going through the Tomlinson renovation, there were trees that were planted in memory of certain individuals, and they just were lost. So I don't want, we might have a 25-year, but I think we need to keep a record of them so that we know what we're doing. It's too easy to, after many years, to lose sight of what it was, and when we do a renovation, forget what happened.
That's a good point. We went through the same thing when we just did the traffic circle. We were asked if there was anything named, and we unfortunately lost track. Is there anything anybody would wish? This is just a first read. It'll be a voting item at the next meeting. That's it?
Well, just one comment.
Sure. Mr. Dwyer.
Do you expect there to be administrative regulations that will follow on to this policy? Or will the policy stand as is?
We might need to put some regulations on it. For example, I'm thinking we may want to develop a form that has all the elements to it. That usually would be sort of a reg. And so if somebody says, I think this came up at the committee level actually, right? Didn't you, I think you talked about that, was that somebody says, what do we do to name something? We say, here's the form and here's the process. So that would be one thing. And if we want to put something in there about keeping track, you see there's two different things we're keeping track of here, and I think the Tomlinson issue and some others are, if somebody simply wants to put a plaque somewhere or put a tree or a bench, whatever, I mean, that's not something that comes to the board. So this is really specific to naming a facility or a part of a facility. That's not quite so hard to keep track of. It's the smaller ones that are harder to keep track of. So right now my thoughts are on the reg to probably just create some sort of a template for people to fill out to submit it, but I'm open to suggestions when you finally get to it at the next meeting. If you have some ideas for regs, we certainly could consider them.
The reason I ask is I think Mr. Fattabine's concern is recognized, and at least I recognize it, and that we ought to find a way through either the policy as the 3-year waiting period or the regs to show that this is indeed a unique recognition and not one that every school says, well, so-and-so got recognized last year, I need to do it for my retiring teacher, because I think that will take away from the honor of it.
Anybody else? Mr. Convertito?
And just briefly, and that's something we talked in depth about, and what we didn't want to do was get in the habit of naming things after retirees and having it be sort of this icon for somebody else walking through the door doing the same position, okay, and have it being something that's intimidating. That's why we put a wait period in there. We talked about a threshold of so many per year, or they would all be considered at one point during the year, so there would be some choice and competition between certain requests. And those are all things that, you know, we discussed. We eventually felt that the waiting period was sufficient, but if the board feels differently, we're happy to take a look at that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, the next item is the discussion of the Educational Technology Plan, July 1st, 2012 to June 30th, 2015, which is a closure number 7 in our packet.
I'm going to have Nancy and Karen both come up. They both worked on this. Yeah, come on up and sit, because we've got 2 seats up there. This plan does require that the board approve it. It's not need to be approved. I think the deadline is June 15th, so we have 2 more meetings between now and then to approve it. It's a condition of receiving federal funds for technology, so we need to comply. All right, I'll let Nancy and Karen take it from here.
I just wanted to, Nancy and I both want to give you a little bit of an overview rather than, I mean, you've got all the information, it's kind of long. So we just really wanted to explain that it's done, this whole plan is presented in a particular format that's prepared by the state of Connecticut, and it's all developed around the national technology education standards and the state standards which reflect the national standards. It's a 3-year plan. It has to be, as Dave said, it has to be approved by the board and submitted to the state, and without it, we can't get the E-rate funding, which, Nancy, that saves us a substantial amount of money every year. Basically, the plan asks us what is our status in Fairfield Public Schools in technology in the areas of curriculum integration, professional development, infrastructure and telecommunication, administrative needs, and equitable use. So that's how the plan is laid out. We look at where are we, where do we want to be 3 years from now in those areas. And basically then there are 5 technology education goals. And so we write the plan based on those goals, and those are about using technology to create engaging and empowering learning experiences for all students, using technology in the area of assessment, using technology resources to connect teaching and learning, providing an infrastructure for teaching and learning so that all educators have access to comprehensive technology, and using technology to improve the productivity and efficiency of learning. So those are the components that the plan is based on, and we have a large committee in the district of 25 people, and you'll find that on pages 9 and 10 of the plan. And the idea is to get broad representation across the district, so we have parents on the committee, students on the committee. In fact, 2 of them you'll see are your board representatives. And then we have central office administrators, building administrators, curriculum leaders, teachers, library media specialists, instructional technology staff. So it's a very broad representation.
Nancy? I was just going to add, we also have parents on the committee. Yeah. Yeah. You'll see the details in the plan. I don't think there's anything relatively shocking in there. At the beginning of the plan, there's some assessment information the state's collecting. Much of that's associated with the online assessments that are coming that relate to the national core curriculum. And the rest of it sort of speaks for itself, so I guess we welcome your questions.
Right. Thank you. Mrs. Kennelly?
Just to clarify, Dr. Tyler used the phrase that we need to comply. is it that this is something different? Is it simply, this is what we're always doing and we're having to re-up? I just wanted to clarify exactly what it is that we're doing.
The format of the template are goals that are set at the national level, and in turn, each state follows a format to comply with those national standards, and then each local educational agency, which Fairfield is one, must come back and do a needs assessment and then come up with their goals and strategies for meeting the overall national goals. It's all part of the funding for what we call the Universal Service Fund. If you look at the bottom of your utility bills, mostly phone bills, you'll see a little tax there. That money is redistributed on a grant basis and helps fund infrastructure for school systems and libraries nationwide. So what they try to do is get you to create a plan that you can back up what you're asking for your grant money for. In our case, because we are sociodemographically rich, we generally get about 41% of the money that we expend or what is available to be expended by the E-rate. And typically what we get it for is phone service and data communications expenses. So you'll see that if you went back a few years, you'd see grant money that came into the district. Now we actually net our utility costs out by the cost of, by the grant money that we receive. So we're actually saving approximately $200,000 a year through the application process of E-rate. And this is just a part of the package that we're required to follow in order to be approved for those grants.
Okay, so are any of these goals or standards changing?
They all modify a little bit. If you go back to the current plan that expires in June, they're very similar. There's a little bit of a track difference, getting more into online use for assessments and data mining. And I would say they've gotten a little bit more specific over the years, but you could go back to our previous plans to actually see the difference.
But I would say that our goals are changing. The national and state ones aren't, but how we approach those goals over 3 years are changing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Convertito?
Page 7, Educational Technology and Literacy. My understanding is this report essentially was the same 3 years ago when it was submitted? Is that correct?
Pretty much.
Can we get a copy of the previous plan, because I don't have a copy of that and I couldn't find one.
We can certainly send you one, sure. I believe it's on the district website.
This is July 1. I have one that says July 1, 2012 to June 2015.
Right, that's what's before you, and then the one that's on the website that's our current plan was 09 to 12.
Okay, fine, I will get it from there. The numbers in the last column significantly changed from the previous plan?
Not significant.
Not significantly.
Why? If this is an improvement plan, have we measured any improvement in the last 3 years?
I'd have to defer to Mrs. Parks, but unfortunately, she hasn't been here long enough to really know where we came from. I don't usually...
Would this educational technology literacy chart be in the previous plan?
Yes, and there is some improvement over the previous plan, yes.
Okay. On page...
If I might respond to one comment, I think when you talk about teaching and technology literacy, one of the things that we're trying to do is embed the use of technology in all of our curriculum. You see that theme throughout this plan, and you'll see some of it in our prior plan. But there is always that need for time, and there's so many things we're trying to get instructors to know, new curriculum, new ways of looking at data analysis and that sort of thing, that how do you define technology literacy? You know, it used to be, you know, could you turn the computer on and type a Word document? Now it's, can you analyze data to find out if your students are achieving or not? So I wouldn't want you to think that we haven't seen progress. I think it's a different type of a standard that's being applied to that technology literacy now.
So the new standard is higher, the new measure.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. Page 15. bottom table, third section, students elementary, second paragraph. There are numerous before and after school programs that provide access to computers and other technical equipment as needed. What are those programs?
They vary from school to school. Some of them are homework programs. Some of them are programs run by various teachers. There's a variety of things that are out there.
Okay. And we have those documented?
I would say each of the principals probably does, yes.
Okay, page 16. Students high school. Middle of the paragraph. The Library and Media Center is available to students after school. Didn't we not eliminate that last year?
It is available after school. It's just not available as liberally as it used to be.
It's 2 days a week instead of 4.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Gerber or Mr. Liu, do you have any questions? Mr. Carey?
Oh, wait, actually.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, just on page 21, the instructional leader for technology position.
Yes.
That's something that's going to be in next year's budget, or maybe?
No.
Perhaps. Okay, I'm just curious about that.
I can, it's one of the questions I asked when I read it. I said, oh, this actually was flagged in the audit.
Yes.
The operational audit. We presently have an individual who serves dual purpose. He's the curriculum leader for social studies, also the curriculum leader in technology. And the audit suggested we split those and create separate positions because we have a full-time curriculum leader in the content areas, and that if we're going to be serious about implementing technology, we should have somebody overseeing it on the instructional side, really working on it. And so it's in as a goal. Whether it survives is anybody's guess. But that's what we'd like to do. We really think that's necessary, but after the speeches last night, I don't know if we'll ever see it, but I would like to pursue it, I guess is the way, that's why it's in here.
Yeah, I just, sorry, one other budget question, page 23, with the implement wireless communication K through 8, that to be completed by 6:30.
That's in our budget.
That's, yeah.
Yes, that's
It's in the current budget.
in the
That's
current
next year.
budget for the next school year.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Just
And it will stay.
clarifying that. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Carey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know the hour's late, but I do have several questions with your indulgence, and depending on the answers, maybe some advice. First, I'd like to thank all our staff and the parents who participated in the technology committee. I actually had the privilege of doing that myself about 4 years ago, and it's a fascinating group, and it's really interesting as a parent to listen to how our administrators and teachers collaborate, and some of the exciting things at least they were doing 3 or 4 years ago to help drive education forward in the community. And it was pretty exciting then, so I'm glad to see what this has evolved to. I have a similar question to Mr. Convertito, but in a slightly different vein on page 7. You have to put up, you have to be patient because I'm still in the old math, not the new math we just approved. But I believe, if I read this chart correctly, that 93.9% of our students in 8th grade are technologically literate. However, only 80% of our K through 8 and 9 through 12 teachers are. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's a concern of mine, and it was a concern of the technology committee when I served on it 4 years ago. And I understand there's sensitivities with union relationships and what have you, but we are embarking on a very expensive and important endeavor in this district to start to use data to drive our education plan forward. And if 20% of our teachers don't have the basic skills to access that data, we're not going to be able to achieve those goals. So if I look at pages 21, 22, goal number 3, I do see opportunities for increased professional development, it looks like, more support for our staff. What I don't see, and what I'd like to discuss with our administrative team and with this board, is at what point are we going to compel our staff to have some level of proficiency here? And what I mean is that, you know, in any industry, you have to keep up with the times. I don't suppose, and I'm just going to posit a theory here, but I don't suppose that our newest, least expensive teachers are the folks who are having trouble with technological literacy. I suspect that it might be the problem that some of our teachers who have been here the longest, who are at the highest pay scale, might be the people that are in that 20% area. And one of the things that we might want to consider having in here is some type of path by some type of date certain that we get all of our staff technologically literate if we're going to make the investment in student systems and we're going to make the investment in the data program. We're going to need to be able to have the basic skills to do that. So that's one of the things that I think that I'd like to throw out there to the board, to our team. I'd be happy to hear the team's reaction, or if we want to mull that over and discuss it next time, that's fine.
So perhaps you could start by defining technologically literate.
Well, actually, the numbers that you see were based on a self-assessment, a survey that was done by the teachers. So, you know, as all human beings are, you're going to have some teachers that are going to be harder on themselves than perhaps others. So we asked some very specific questions in that assessment. To be honest, it was done last summer. I don't remember what those questions were off the top of my head. But we can certainly get that back to you to let you know what it was.
I think it's possible that it's not as disturbing as what it appears at first, having completed those surveys myself, and what I think I'm technologically literate with versus not, and how it impacts the classroom versus not, and impacts my ability to self-assess, or any teacher's ability to self-assess, drive curriculum and drive instruction. It's, again, I think that might be a little bit deceptive.
And that's an excellent point Ms. Scully has, and one of the things that I know that was discussed 4 years ago, I don't know where we've gotten with this, is what are the rubrics that we're going to have in place to define where our teachers stand, how are we going to measure that, and how are we going to measure success? And I don't know how far we've gotten with that, but that might be a good next question through the chair to our team in terms of do we have some type of formalized assessment process in place to know that our teachers can do more than maybe, you know, store a Word document in the server and get it back? Are we looking at that in terms of our professional development and then also our evaluation of our staff?
Actually, that has come up in our discussion several times in our committee, and we, other than surveying the teachers and the everyday software that we use, we really don't have a high-quality assessment tool. Some of it is because of this argument over what literacy means, what do you measure, but it is something that we feel we need. I think the other piece is we have to create the need for teachers to use technology in teaching the curriculum, which will help to drive them to use the technology and become proficient. So it's areas we're working on in the curriculum. It's areas, I think your idea of a rubric is something we've discussed. We just aren't there yet, but we need to, that's something we have to put into the committee in terms of what skills are essential and what aren't, and where is a basic or someone who's learning or emerging and proficient and advanced, but we don't have that yet.
Okay, well, and that's and I don't want to harp on this, and I do thank Ms. Scannelli for her point, because if it's self-assessment, and at that point, numbers might be as graphic as they appear on the black and white here.
Tim, I just was also say that anytime you see something where the results are binary, you either are or you aren't, there's probably a gradation in there, right? It's not captured when you say yes or no. And so I think if we want to pursue this, we might want to look at a more fine-grained distinction here. If there's a continuum from, you know, beginning to really proficient, where do we stand? Because when it's just either yes or no, sometimes that is a little starker than I'm not saying that we don't have work to do in this area, but I think that, if there's a cutoff, and there's a whole bunch of teachers that if they had answered one other question one different way would have been over it, it can be misleading.
Right. No,
Either way, it can be misleading. It might overstate it or it might understate it.
Yeah.
My only concern was their progression from the last one to this one. And if our staff doesn't think that they're progressing in, technological literacy, maybe that's a little light bulb should be going off.
And again, there's no measure, so that's kind of where I want to go with this. Is let's have a measure and measure against it, and then see if we need to improve or not. Is the basic thing. On the positive, just looking through your document, our infrastructure and its design, I believe, is excellent, and I wanted to just reinforce that. And I think that the team's done a great job with that. In terms of the mix of wireless and dedicated connections, the amount of bandwidth, the ability and flexibility gives this district to use video, voice, and then, as was noted in this document, we have an aging telecom system, but that provides us with a lot of flexibility. Our team, when they're evaluating different solutions based on the core data center that we have right now. So I think that's something that our team should be commended on. It gives this district and the town a lot of flexibility, especially when they're looking at telecom solutions. I think in 2014 is what this document said. Regarding BYOD devices, bring your own devices. Don't need an answer to this immediately, but I'm just curious. If we went paperless right now at the high schools for September 1st next year, just out of curiosity, if you guys can come up with a rough number, how much will we save in copying?
It's not just copying, it's also printing.
Okay, so copying, printing, whatever we can
I'm not sure.
conservatively established, and if you guys can just give us a rough number before we vote on this, I'd be curious about this, because that might be something that's worth fast-tracking. That money might be able to be reinvested in the actual devices in some way. But I'd be curious about that. I saw you have the instructional leader, which I think is a good idea. Couple things. When you have 800 to 1,000 BYOD devices that are playing the really cool video on YouTube, and I know I'm dating myself by saying YouTube, well, the kids will be like, what's that? Something much cooler now. All at the same time, that's going to do something to your infrastructure. So we might want to look at or consider additional resources from network management. And as you add more BYOD devices that are out of control in your network, you're going to have to seriously consider strategic and tactical information security staff, either renting it, buying it, but I didn't see any additional staff other than that one person in this plan for you to be able to take on all these extra, potentially thousands of devices. It's going to put pressure on our network, and it's going to put pressure on the security of sensitive and important data that we're collecting. So
I can tell you that we've already started to address that because, like it or not, everybody who has a smartphone is connecting to our network. We've separated what we call the guest network from those devices that the district owns. So they're completely segregated. We also have it managed so that the bandwidth flips. So if the dedicated part of the network is stressed, it takes from the guest. We also are looking at, and part of the budget that you all graciously approved this year is allowing us to pick up some software enhancements that are going to allow us to manage wireless devices and also to kill applications that are potentially a threat on the network or are causing us difficulty as far as bandwidth is concerned. So, we're definitely ready. Well, I can't say we're completely ready, but we're working in the direction of being ready.
Those all sound like excellent things, so it sounds like you're very much in front of it, and that's highly appreciated. It's going to be fun. So just keep in mind, and keep the bodies, I want the body here to keep in mind as we look at budgets moving forward, that if we're going to start bringing all these devices, which I think is a very good idea, into this network, we're going to need more people in our staff to handle that. It's just going to be a reality, otherwise the network will have problems and it will impact our ability to operate during the day.
We're making your budget arguments for you.
Well, no, I just wanted, I'm not advocating.
For November.
I'm just telling you what it is, because when everything stops, that's a bad day. Two more quick things, and I do apologize amount of time I'm taking, but one was on page 23, and it caught my eye. Left-hand column, fourth bullet down, evaluate use of tablet devices with a data plan at secondary schools. And I saw in here also that we're looking to work with Verizon. Why the data plan when we have a wireless network infrastructure, and soon we're going to have a wireless network infrastructure in all our campuses?
May I?
Yes, please.
This is in support of 24/7 learning. Our students are not expected to stop learning when they walk out the door of the building. What we wanted to do was take a look at the ability for a student to have access to whatever they needed in the curriculum, whatever kind of resources we could provide to them, whether they're at home, on the bus, on the baseball field, watching a game, at the beach, doing whatever they do socially, because kids don't stop. You see them all with whatever their devices are now. Anecdotally, somebody told me the other day that the average device per person now is 3.18. I don't know what the 0.18 would be, but that was just sort of scary thinking about it. And then I started thinking about what I lug around myself, and it's like, oh. So our plan is that we've got about 25 tablets for each high school, and we currently have 2 English teachers who have said that they would be our trailblazers. We negotiated a very nice contract with Verizon, who has a couple of other pilots in the state and a couple of other towns that have recently launched. And we're going to see what the teachers can do. They're going to select some apps. We're going to download those apps to the devices. And we're going to use some of Verizon's tools to allow us to comply with the Children's Internet Protection Act and all those kind of good things, and see where it goes. We've done some analysis of return on investment. If we can convert our curriculum to online resources and hand one of these to each student, it's about $2,500 for the 4 years that student would own that device. Now these are rough estimates based on a real quick and dirty return on investment. But when we look at what the cost of traditional textbooks are and other kinds of materials, and the concern about kids lugging 30-pound books times how many in the backpacks to and from, the loss and replacement of those books, the trade books in the English department that have to be replaced every 2 years because they just wear out, you get that $2,500 back in a break-even pretty quickly. So we thought that we needed to go forward with this. It supports the national core standards. It supports the 21st century learning standards. It supports our curriculum direction. So we're trailblazing with it to see how it works out.
And your teachers are going to be the ones who actually have possession of these devices initially?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
So the
that?
tablets are going to go to the teachers initially?
We have 2 teachers. They've had the tablets now for about 3 weeks so that they could learn what they were all about, select the apps. Part of this started from looking at e-readers, and I think we had a conversation that I can't remember which board it was that asked about that. I think maybe it was an RTM member during the budget process. Are we looking at e-readers? Are we looking at online things? And we've done a really robust analysis of everything from the Nook, the Kindle, and so forth, and we kind of came up with a solution that an all-around tablet that was as inexpensive, but provided more access might be the best solution. So, use the Kindle app, use something called Overdrive, which is something that we subscribe to, which gives us the ability to give online books or e-books to kids that can check them out, sort of like an online library. So those are all these tools that we're starting to utilize that will save paper, will enhance learning so that it's really anytime, any place, and in the end, potentially reduce some of our overhead.
So I think what you were asking is, we have 2 teachers who have them, who are getting the apps, but they're going to have class sets, so they'll use them. The students will also use them, and they're working with the curriculum leader in language arts to make sure it's following the curriculum, and just to pilot and see how it works.
Okay, and we can discuss that a little bit more, but back and forth on providing cellular data plans. We've got a pretty good infrastructure, I think, here, and that'll be a discussion we can have. We do have internet filters, and we're SIPA compliant within our infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay. Lastly, not least, this is a bigger topic for another day, but one of the things I do not see in here, and I'm a bit disappointed, and it's a subject I brought up at least once or twice in the last couple of years. It ties to the fact that we have quite a few classes here in this building, as well as at Ward, that are advanced language classes, advanced AP classes that we can't fit out with 15 or 20 kids. We have 6 or 8 or 10 students taking, Greek 4 or Latin or Chinese, 8 at each school. And one of the promises of reinstituting 2 high schools in this town more than 10 years ago was the possibility of distance learning. I think that based on the economic environment and what we've heard a lot from the RTM over the last couple of years is that there will not be continued support for us to be able to continue to provide teachers for classrooms with 8 students in them. And if we have 8 students on this side of town, 8 students over at Ward, we have to be creative and figure out how we can use technology. We certainly have the infrastructure to support it, to be able to drive those types of classes. And I would suggest that our teaching and our curriculum is so good, not that we want to become a for-profit business here, but this is something that's marketable to local districts. That you could bring in kids from Bridgeport or Wilton or Reading to be involved in these classes, and it would be a way that we could save a lot of money and be able to continue to have the breadth of classes that we would like to have that will be continually threatened by budget cuts. So I would just throw it out to our team on the board to consider incorporating in this or a future plan this type of resource, because I think it's going to be key for us to maintain the breadth of options and opportunities that we offer to our students. That's all I have, Mrs.
I would actually agree with that last point. I just want to remind everybody it's 10:15. We do have another item on the agenda. Does anybody else has technology stuff they want to go through? We do have the handbook and Mrs. Brand.
Yeah, there were a couple of things. First of all, thank you. This is the most in-depth approach that I think we've had to technology and incorporating it in the school district that I've ever seen in all the time I've been here, so thank you. One of the other things I think when I look at technology, when I look at education, I see technology primarily as a tool to enhance. It isn't a substitute. We did try and do an online learning program earlier. I think it was with AP, a particular AP math course, and they did run into a tremendous amount of difficulties. It doesn't mean that we don't have the technology even that is more advanced now to perhaps work with that, but I do think we have to be mindful of the development of the students and the age group. Online courses have worked for college level at certain levels. They've worked for adults. They may, in fact, in some time work for certain students. I'm just not sure if at high school we're there yet. Maybe they will be. Maybe the students are more comfortable with it now, years later, than they were earlier. But I do think we do have to think about, be mindful of that interaction with students, with the teacher. It's been what we've done with class size and felt that was important. And I want to be cautious in approaching that. And then the other thing I have is really just such a basic thing. I think Mr. Carey was talking about standards. In terms of tools, I think that parents and students, as well as staff, start to have a standard of expectation. Is the homework going to be posted? Will I have access? And I think those kind of things, I think, are pretty basic, but I think to have some kind of continuity in the district, I think is reasonable. I think we have to move forward, and I think it is helpful. The other thing that I wanted to mention was we do have student tutors, and perhaps my colleagues, their children are much younger, so and they also may also be much younger, but I know that my children have tutored me. So it doesn't mean when we're talking about just a tool that we can't actually have, quite frankly, if our own students are so proficient in not offering tutoring service, quite frankly, to our staff. I mean, it's my kids that are teaching me. It's there. I think they'd enjoy it. I think it'd be a great opportunity, and quite frankly, it's clearly cost effective. But, we're talking about recipes and sharing. I think it'd be a great way to help us all out here. And lastly, I actually nudged Karen Park sitting next to me, and the one thing I do see that we really get on the ball is this starts to take off, and it really already is. I know you already are working on the policy of parameters, how we protect our students, what guidelines we have for staff, for students, for parents. I think we've got to be very careful and mindful of that moving forward. Do you have a rough idea when you think a policy like that might be ready? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're working on the acceptable use guidelines for staff and students right now, and we want to have it finished before the end of the year.
Thank you, that's it.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to move on to the next item, which is a discussion of the Board of Education handbook. Again, this is something that the board sent to the policy committee for work on under the helm of Mr. Dwyer, who agreed to help orchestrate putting it together. If you remember correctly, we asked the policy committee to put all of our existing practices, per se, that didn't really fit into the bylaws into writing. So that's hopefully what this has achieved. I know based on the cover memo, they have a couple of recommendations for the board to further review. But does anybody have any commentary on what is in the actual packet right now? Not the cover letter, but what we actually did research on and assembled as to what we knew as our practices as they exist today. Mrs. Brand.
There was just one thing, there are a couple of things. Building committees, I believe that we did review this a while.
Are there page numbers? Do you mind just giving?
Oh, yeah, it's page 1. We had Board of Ed bylaws, and it had building committees listed. I think with your position a while back, we went through this to verify that board members can be voting members on building committees. Right now, we're serving as liaison.
You're just on page 1? Where on page 1? Why am I not seeing building committees?
Board of Education Committee and liaison responsibilities.
Can I respond?
Mr. Dwyer can respond, but I still don't know where the
Jennifer.
1?
She's just talking about the...
I'm sorry, I'm referring to enclosure 8.
Yeah, enclosure 8. Is just the title page?
No, it's actually numbered page 1. It's number 4, Board of Education Committee and liaison responsibilities.
Oh, okay, I see.
About midway down, we have under liaison responsibilities, number 2, Board of Ed bylaws, building committees.
Cooperative building committees. Okay, yes, Mr. Dwyer will respond to that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's okay.
You're referring to the table of contents. Our bylaws refer to the 2 groups that we appoint to as part of the town charter. And then there are 5 listed that are by bylaws. And then the others that are listed, the special projects, building projects, and review committee and SEPTA, fall under the category of, and the chair may appoint to other liaisons as she deems fit, he deems fit. So that's why I organized them in these 3 categories. If you turn to page 9, the description of the building committee, our bylaws, this language comes out of our bylaws in which it says that is subject to approvals that may be required by the town. The BOE chair appoints a member of the board to act as a voting member of any school building committee. So that's exactly what it says in our bylaws.
Yeah, actually, I know that, and I know this came up as a question. I wanted to make sure that, in fact, we are able to do that.
We had a ruling from Mrs. Canelli, Assistant Attorney Canelli.
Right, that's exactly, because we ran into this before.
Yeah, she gave us a ruling on that. Now, that doesn't mean that the town makes us voting members, but yes.
No, but I wanted, in fact, that's all I'm bringing up. I think my point is that should be cited, that actually has been verified, because we did run into some confusion in the past regarding that. I know it's been taken care of, but I think it's worthwhile noting that it has been addressed. The only other part I saw that was really just a page 8, the Board of Health and also the Parks and Rec are actually, it says in both those descriptions, it has serves as a member. They are both voting members.
The trying to stay within Mr. Fatabean's strict that the bylaws don't have the word voting in it. The bylaws just say a member, and because those are separate organizations, I presume that when you are a member of that board, you are a voting member, but the bylaws don't have the word voting, so I didn't put it in there.
Yeah, because I looked at number 2 on the next page, because I looked and wondered if it was consistent, and yet we have SES written as voting members. That's why and I don't think we had that written in. I just want to be.
Yeah, no, I'll
we can do it either
I can,
way. It doesn't matter. I just want to make
through
sure.
the chair, if I can respond. I'll check both of them to see if the language needs to be clarified.
Thank you.
Mrs. Kennelly, I was going to say I have one thing if you guys want it.
I mean, if there were just one more, I was just thinking that in the interest of time, we had a couple of very distinct topics that we really wanted board feedback on tonight to bring back to policy, to then bring back a draft with no cover sheet memo.
Yep, no, I just want to get through, I will get to that piece. Right now, I just want to get through the actual handbook part, and then I'll get to the memo.
Okay, because we were willing to not get to the actual handbook, but to take feedback via email for a fuller discussion, but that's up to you.
Okay. I don't think there's really a whole lot more, actually. I just have one thing, which is pretty, I think, hopefully easy. On page 10 on the meeting schedule of other town bodies, I thought it would be helpful if we added in a line that said, please visit the town website for any schedule changes, and then just listing the town website there. That's my only recommendation on the actual handbook site. All right, excellent. So it looks like we're pretty good to go on the handbook piece of it. And then the questions that the policy committee put together were some areas where they thought we could make some additions, but these are things that need to be discussed by the board. So Mrs. Kennelly, I'll turn your memo over to you.
Okay, so we were... This is now our 4th draft of this, and the one recurring topic that we've kept coming back to is going strictly with what is already existing practice, bylaw, and having that and that only be what is in the handbook, and yet that has prompted conversation of things that we think should either become practice or should in fact come to the level of bylaw. And the first couple of topics were issues of practice that we all on the policy committee liked as an idea, but we did not feel comfortable putting it in the draft to come before the board for a reading, because in fact it is not practice, but we believe should be. And the first topic comes to actually Mr. Liu's point. I'd actually like Mr. Convertito to speak to, and that's the issue regarding the timetable and goal setting. And so, Mr. Convertito, if I can turn that over to you.
Okay. If you look at, the front page of the enclosure number 8, under number 1, proposed budget review language, we had a great deal of discussion, again, about what should and shouldn't be in it, and we finally settled on, let's document what we're currently doing, okay, and then as a policy committee, come up with some suggestions of what we think we should be doing, and also accept any other suggestions from the whole board as to what they also would like to see in it. To Mr. Liu's point earlier about goal setting and so forth, we had initially set a timetable in August for the board to hold a high-level meeting, or hold a meeting to have high-level discussions on long-term, short-term goals and priorities for the upcoming operating and capital budgets. Again, the impetus behind that being, we've gone through essentially an entire school year. We've gotten end-of-year reports. We've heard back from, we typically hear on the lunch program in late May, early June, right? Okay. We can note, what those goals we want to see instituted for the next year, have those discussions in August prior to the school year going, formalize those goals, as well as any other goals we want to do, so that we as a board are saying to the public, hey, 2013, 2014, or 2012, 2013, this is what we're looking at, okay? And these are what we expect to see come to fruition. And I just think for us as a board to set certain goals on a yearly basis, in addition to what we have as a long-term strategic plan, just gives us a little bit more clarity and a little more focus throughout the year. So that was the impetus behind that. The other ones were other just suggested timeframes for when the board should take up certain issues, and how many, how we should take them up. So that was the whole thing behind the timetable. Again, this was suggested. I asked for patience earlier in the night on a point, and I wanted to point out that we had thought about that, whether we do it in August or we do it in June or whatever. I think it's important for the board to have a timetable in the year where we're going to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Again, this is a handbook. It's not a bylaw. We can amend it on a yearly basis if it doesn't work, very simply. But the public also has an idea of what time of year they should be looking for the things that interest them, if we have the timetable out there. So that was the main discussion on the timetable. So if members have comments or they want to email comments, we're happy to talk about this.
What are your goals in terms of being able to adopt the handbook? I was hoping that we would be able to do that sometime in June. Is that a
Honestly,
achievable goal?
At this point,
It sounds like we're here on the handbook. You
right,
just want
we're here on the
clarification.
handbook. These are things that we would like to add to the handbook, but it's with the recognition of the board that we're looking to the future to change practice. There's one exception, that's a bylaw. That's the last issue that we'll bring up. Okay. But we would like to implement on the page with the calendar. What we have in there now for January through December reflects only current practice. And we would like to have a reflection that we would like to be more specific in setting out goals. This is something that would go to the press. This is something that would go to the schools. This is something that would go to parents. That we as a board in August are going to set goals for the board itself. Going with that was the idea, but we did not feel comfortable as a policy committee putting that in the handbook since it does not fit current practice.
Gotcha.
And so we're looking for direction from the board, either we like that idea or not.
Okay. Does anyone then, based on that, want to offer feedback on number 1 as proposed by the policy committee? Because hopefully then we can start to move towards getting this adopted sooner rather than later. I personally thank you for taking the extra step and putting that out there. It was important to me to make sure we at least got our existing stuff on paper first, but I thank you for taking the next step to see where we would possibly be like to go as a board. Mrs. Brand, you had comments on item 1.
I'm confused. If I'm item 1, and we're talking about master calendar as part of that, because we were talking about January through, am I being too specific, or?
No, so
if you look at page 4, you have the months listed: January, February, March, April, May, June, July.
Right, that's what we currently do.
That's what we currently do.
Right.
On the cover page, where it says proposed budget review, section 4B, okay? We have June in there, what we would do in June. If you look under June in the actual handbook, it doesn't really, that's not included in there, okay?
We'd like to be specific just to August.
Okay, all right, so let's look
one person at the mic at a time.
Okay, let's look at August. Item number 8 on page 4 states 1 regular meeting is scheduled for the 4th Tuesday of the month, okay? September, that's actually a misnumbering. September should be number 9. November should be 10, December should be 11, okay? So the change would be to number 8, would be on the back side of the memo. The board holds a high-level discussion on long and short-term goals and priorities for the upcoming year. Okay, that would be inserted into that master calendar. Yeah. And I mean, that was one suggestion that we came out, and if the board can agree to allow us to do that, then we'll do that and we'll make those edits.
In the interest of public, what I would recommend that you do is have an August discussion and a vote in September. That way it gives people time to digest, figure out what they want to do, and then we set the goals. We have a discussion, then we vote on it in September. The second thing, when I'm looking at the master calendar in terms of budget development, I think I had talked to Mr. Dwyer some time ago about master calendar, and that you want to have place card holders for items that are certain times of the year. You have to have these on the agenda, and whether it's curriculum documents or if we want to have a discussion about how our food service program is doing prior to June, if we want to include in the master calendar in May, for instance, that we automatically write in for the superintendent to have an update on expulsions. the reason I'm saying these things is that when we do them, and our policy manual is so tremendous, that it's not through any malintent, it's just oftentimes things we just miss. And so if we start to put them and incorporate them and have them in here, we can update them or change them, but I think it will help us stay on track so that we don't miss things as readily. And off the top of my head, I don't have all of them, but I know that we had talked about this kind of approach before, because I think we'd be looking at when we were going to be evaluating the superintendent, when the board's going to have a board evaluation. So we start to already have it in place, and everyone has that expectation of what time of year we're going to be doing those things. I think it would be helpful in terms of board operations.
The only reason we didn't get more specific with agenda things is because there's a conflict with the bylaws. Yeah. Bylaw says the superintendent sets the agenda. If we can do a calendar that these are when we anticipate hearing these, and that was really it was more of a guideline that, you know.
I'd hesitate to get too specific.
Yeah, we hesitated very much to get too specific because we didn't want to get to a big discussion of do we change the bylaws, do we not change the bylaws, and so forth. So there was only one in here that actually required a bylaw change, which I think was the
adoption of the meeting calendar.
The meeting schedule, which was item number 2. Okay.
But a point of information, I think it is the superintendent that sets the agenda, but in conjunction with the chair as well.
That is correct.
Both.
That's true.
So yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but I think this captures in essence what we're trying to do, and I understand where you're going with that. I just would be hesitant to get too specific, because then you're pigeonholing yourself, and you're not allowing yourself the flexibility to get through some of the things that you need to get through. So.
Yeah, my concern is we've gotten through things like we've had redistricting meetings, which have then consumed the board and not let us also do some of our other work. If we knew we had to do that work, I think we could at least incorporate it. Look, if this ends up being a side piece that goes as a cheat sheet for a chair, that's fine. But I just think it would help everyone if they sort of knew what the kinds of things and what times of year. They're not binding. Right. I think that's the distinction I'm making. They're not binding, but I think it would help us remind us. It's just a trigger that I think would be helpful. I don't see these as an absolute. It's a handbook. It's a guide. It's not a mandate, and I think that's the distinction.
Okay. Anybody else want to have any feedback?
Some questions on it.
Okay. Dr. Title had some.
There's I think Mr. Confortino made reference to it. When we had that workshop with Bob Rader, he talked about having the board setting goals for the board, if you remember, as opposed to the board setting goals for the school system. They're two different things.
Right.
And I don't know if that's incorporated here or not, because the way I read it, it sounds like you're talking about budget priorities, goals for the system. I don't see anything in here about the board setting goals for the board. Remember, he gave some examples about improving communication, or, updating, at least 5 policies through the year. In other words, the board was committed to achieving as a board. That was the first step. And I don't see that here. Was that part of the intent or not?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Correct. On the page 2 of the memo, the bold is not a very well-constructed sentence, or it might be considered a run-on sentence by true English majors, I don't know. But those were really two different thoughts, that there would be a discussion of long and short-term goals and objectives, which was Mr. Convertito's original thought, which could be both for the school district as well as for ourselves as a board. Could be both. And then there's a separate discussion in August about priorities for the upcoming operating and capital budgets. So there's a run-on sentence there, and I considered that actually to be 2 different topics.
It might be 3 different topics. It might be 3 different topics.
Well, if you separate goals into board goals, right, and then school district goals, and then budget.
I think we've got operating, topics, capital, yeah, long, short, board. I mean, it's probably better to narrow the scope.
And I assume that my job as editor is to take notes of the board discussion, and then the policy committee has to make sense out of it.
That is correct.
I'd also point out that one of what we were moving on to then, that was the specific August pertaining to goals. Then we're going to talk about the budget timeline, as well as the suggestion, and I was going to turn it over to Mr. Dwyer, involving the work of the ad hoc committee for capital improvement budget, looking at some of those other months' timetable. And to Dr. Title's point, in June, there was already mentioned, in addition, a review of the budget process and plans for the following year's budget development are discussed. So I suppose there's a degree of redundancy there, and that might be a way that that gets separated and that August isn't all encompassing. But I'm not sure if that speaks to your point, Dr. Title, but Mr. Dwyer, if you'd like to speak to the issue of the budget timetable and the capital budget.
I almost thought you were going to give me a promotion.
I know, but I caught myself.
The budget language that is in bold, where it says 1A refers to I'll say the three-step process. What are we trying to accomplish? And that's to discuss the budget development and presentation process, present thoughts and ideas, and have adequate time to review. That was what I think is just a statement of what we try and achieve every year. But it's not a statement that had been written down anywhere, and so that's why it's in bold. On the next one down for June, part of our job is to sell the budget, to promote the needs of the students and get our proposed budget approved through the town structure. And this intent is to say, let's take a moment in June to talk about how the last process worked so that we might do a better job of presenting, approving, and I'll say selling the budget the next year. So the June event was more about presentation than about the actual budget, was what I thought that discussion was going to be about. We've talked about the August, so I'll skip to the capital. The special, what do we call ourselves? The ad hoc building projects review committee that Dr. Title and I sit on together with somebody from the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM, had talked earlier and actually implemented it in part this year about trying to separate the review and approval process of the capital improvements project from the operating budget, so that we might have more time as a school district staff to work on the one, get it set, and then focus on the operating. Dr. Title had asked within that committee if that was something everybody was amenable to, and they agreed, so we moved it forward, not on this schedule, but sooner. The discussion within the committee was that if the Board of Education could get their recommended capital budget voted at the December meeting, then the Board of Selectmen could get it accomplished, then Board of Finance, so that potentially we could have the RTM voting on the capital budget in February, and therefore our staff have a little bit more planning time to get ready for the busy summer season. So the intent of the November language and the December language is to implement what I think is an unofficial recommendation that's coming out of that committee. And that if we put it in our handbook, we'll all be clairvoyant.
Anybody have any other commentary? So what I'm hearing is it sounds like you're going to be fine moving forward with implementing some of these things, tightening up the language on the 8 August stuff, getting some further clarification. And so with that, I will remand it back to policy to clean that up, get some more clarification. Sure.
There's one final point, and this actually could rise to the level of bylaw.
Oh, the number 2, I apologize.
Right, and that was the issue of the meeting schedule,
Yes.
that as opposed to the idea of our meeting schedule being issued, that it be adopted.
Okay.
The implication being that by adopting it, it involves a board discussion and a board vote, as opposed to just these are the meetings and it's been issued. Because that has been a topic. I know I sat in on a discussion of a prior board that had that discussion, and it was something that we talked about on the policy, but we recognize that that's one that would rise to the level of bylaw, we believed. The others we wanted the go ahead of the board to put into as a recognition of practice, but this was one we were interested as a little bit of direction on.
So do you want to save that for when we revise our bylaws in November?
I think that would be fine. I guess what we were just hoping for is some indication from the board if they were interested in bringing that up as a topic, because we on the policy committee were interested in doing so.
Right. I mean, I personally don't have an issue with doing it, but I would think that we would do it at the time that we revise the bylaws.
That's fine.
But, I mean, that's me. I'm welcome to do whatever the rest of the board wants. Mr. Carey?
Yeah, my brief feedback is I don't necessarily think it's necessary to take, and maybe the committee came up with this for some reason I don't understand. You can help explain to me, but have a protracted discussion each year about the calendar. If we want to change the calendar, we can change the calendar and the bylaws. The bylaws, the way they're written, can be changed at any meeting. So to block out, based on how the conversation's gone before, 20, 40, 60 minutes of time that we can talk about educational issues, talk about our calendar, I don't know if that would be a productive use of time. If we want to collectively change the calendar, I think we can do that almost any time with a bylaw change. So I think I'd prefer to do it that way.
So to clarify, you'd like the policy committee to look at crafting language for that more quickly than waiting till November?
No, what I'm saying is I have no problem with the way it is right now. I don't necessarily need to see a change in that in terms of it being issued versus adopted.
I think your best bet is to raise the issue when we do our bylaws. I think that's your best.
But if there is some rationale that the policy committee thought that why that was a good way of doing it other than just having more protracted discussion about it, then I'm certainly willing to have the discussion or listen to it when we...
That way we can have an in-depth conversation about whether or not it should be changed.
Fine.
Thank you.
I want to be sure, I'm not completely, I just want to put this out there, I'm not completely sold or clear on the whole budget schedule thing. So I need to hear more about that. I need to know specifically about what we're doing because, if it's on there, I'm preparing for it. I need to have staff preparing for it. We can't just come in and say, okay, what do you want your goals to be? It's not how we really want to do things. So I think if we're going to go with this, I see several additional items being on agendas. I just want to be clear about what the intent is, and the language needs to be very clear so there's no misunderstanding when it gets on there that we're talking about what we're supposed to be talking about. So
I think the idea...
And I also want to say that, individual board members giving input prior to the superintendent's budget coming out is different from the board as a whole, right? And it is the superintendent's budget when it comes out. And so we need to balance all that. I'm not opposed to it necessarily, I just think it's got to be clear, and this language right now is all over the place. And I just don't want to be all over the place. So, more discussion.
Yes. Mrs. Kennelly?
I think the direction we've gotten from the board, which is what the policy committee needed, was a go-ahead, which is they were open to the idea of putting some material into the handbook which does not reflect current practice but which we want to be practice. Then there's the issue of crafting the language accordingly, but we didn't even want to devote hours, at this point it has been hours, to crafting that language if the board wasn't amenable to that type of a change. So my perception is that the board is amenable to that. Now it's time to work on language that will then come back to the board again for a discussion and agreement.
Right. I just want to be clear, though, that it's very important that you do have an in-depth conversation with the superintendent and his staff, as our expectations will change of them, and they need to be able to meet them. So,
Dr. Title has seen every one of these drafts, probably more than the 4 drafts that we've talked about. So he's absolutely involved with every part of this.
All right, great. So we will look to you then to get the appropriate clarified language. And again, I would ask that it not come out of committee until you've voted that this is something that we should be talking about. Sure, Mr. Dwyer, and then Mrs. Brand.
Dr. Title was kind enough to get me a copy of the Berlin handbook. And I noticed within that there are some topics covered, none that are controversial, and also some more, quote, definitions that might help people say, well, what do they mean by that acronym? And so I thought I would also be bringing those up to the Board of the Policy Committee for discussion about whether to include them. So there may be a few other topics that are not currently in the table of contents that you'll see in the final recommended draft, simply because I got this a couple of 3 days ago. And if you'll allow some editorial privilege to try and figure out what those are, I'll do so.
If that's what the board wants, that's
Yeah.
fine. Maybe to nod of the head.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I just want to remind the board, it's 10:45. We do adjourn at 11. It's the last thing left on our,
But I just had one comment.
I'm sorry, on the handbook?
Yeah, actually, just be mindful.
I apologize, I did recognize
No,
you
that's
before.
okay. Just make sure we're cognizant of what our policies are, and that what we're putting in here is also consistent with policy. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comments and petitions, the rules of which are stated on the agenda. Would anyone like to address the board at this time? Thank you. Can you line up, because I just need to find out where I am with speaking time, because we adjourn automatically at 11.
I don't think anyone ever said that this was an endurance sport, but I think it is.
You have to be at the mic if you want to speak, so please get in line.
Madam Chair, seeing that it's 10:48 p.m., I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and continue business to 11:15.
All in favor? All right, excellent, cool. Now we don't have to rush. Please go right ahead.
Do I need to state my name and address?
Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joanne LaVista. I live at 135 Sassa Pequon Road. Nancy Hanlon was a colleague of mine when I worked as the district improvement teacher in Fairfield. I'm now an administrator in New Canaan. I'm a Fairfield resident, and my daughter attended Jennings, Osborne Hill, Fairfield Ludlow Middle School, and graduated here from Fairfield Ludlow High School in 2008. Nancy and I became friends when my daughter was a student in her class at Jennings School. Part of my eulogy that Mrs. Hunter mentioned is in her letter. I was the one who Nancy took my daughter home with her when I was in the middle of a family crisis for a week. Nancy was the type of teacher that for all children and families she served in Fairfield was tenacious. She was deeply committed and unusually thoughtful. She touched the children and families that she loved while she gave the 18 years of service to the Fairfield Public Schools, teaching and leading at Jennings, Dwight, Burr, and North Stratfield schools. Just a year ago, at only 48 years old, Nancy died way too soon, way ahead of her time, and way too early for a remarkable teacher. Over the years, we became close friends and always talked about everything, and the conversation often rolled around to her work at school, the children she loved, tutored, and worried about and cared about. She was an advocate for the underdog, amazed by the children who exceeded her expectations, and always looked out for those who needed a little extra love. She creates a void in a school community that lost a family member, a teacher, a friend, a mentor, and a colleague. Teachers are important not only to the students whose lives they touch, but also well beyond those students, to the communities in which they serve. The brick and mortar of a school can be wonderful, lasting legacy to someone who not only touched kids she taught, but also the community of North Stratfield School. What a wonderful opportunity to make a memory last and have her name live on. I know in my heart that Nancy would be honored and feel very admired to have touched a part of North Stratfield School and have something dedicated to her, like the wing that they're discussing. That would be the kind of gift that she would most appreciate, one that would keep Nancy Hanlon, her love and her spirit alive, resonating through the halls of the school she left way too soon. Thank you.
Michelle McCabe, 1060 Merritt Street, and Chair of Field for Learning Partnership. I want to thank the board so much for recognizing that this is such an important issue, and I know that you're balancing it with a lot of important issues, and the fact that you're discussing it before June is an indication that you're responding to some of the interest in the community too about school lunch. The change that's occurred this year has been wonderful. I was hoping that Joanne would share a story about a student, an elementary student who was so enamored of the asparagus, believe it or not, actually asked for the recipe from the cafeteria managers, went home with it, and the parent wrote and said, thank you so much. You know, they appreciated that their child now likes asparagus thanks to the impact of what our lunch program is doing and what you as a board are doing in supporting these efforts. The RTM meeting last night, the PTA president of Ward actually supplied water and fruit salad and not munchkins for their hospitality because of the change in this district. Our PTA president in North Stratfield every month included in our PTA meetings the vegetable of the month recipe. She said she hates vegetables, and now she's loves escarole thanks to it being March's vegetable. So you're having a huge impact at a time where it's really important that we do. And schools are a great opportunity for this. And I think that the direction that the handbook is going is a great way to ensure that we're continuing to move in that direction. The information that comes out is always changing about what food, like pink slime or other issues that might be a problem to our population. It allows us to address those issues. But even more importantly, to have set goals allows the community to be invested in it. And it's a way for parents, for example, to say, well, you know, the lunch program is, their goal this year is to have nothing but whole grains. And a parent can say to their children, you know what, let's do that too. So it's a way to really raise the bar for the whole community and also to get people really interested in the lunch program and participating in the lunch program. A lot of...
That's time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Emily Price, 625 Townhouse Road, Fairfield. Thank you. First of all, it's been a long couple nights. I appreciate your time, and I've learned a lot. Number one, I like eggplant. Number two, I love the wood shop guys. My kids take advanced classes at Ward, and it's nice having something that's, it's not only mindless, it's not mindless. They actually are beautiful boxes. They work with their hands rather than their minds. It's a little break. So please continue that and support it. I would like the board to just think out of the box a little bit. You know, an ex-GE or, you know, retired PTA mom and doing lots of volunteer stuff, but you need to start really thinking outside the box in order to save money. I'm here tonight to say, and I know it's in advance, we're still getting text messages about the other meeting going on, but pay for play. Listen, I can pay. I have, you know, children that never would be on a sports team had we not have a freshman team, a JV team, and a varsity team. They'd be home playing a computer, reading a book, God knows what, but I'm talking for everyone else who's not going to be able. We heard last night that plenty of people need assistance in school lunches. It's just not fair. There's got to be another way. And I think, you know, in listening, technology is the way to go. Let's get the teachers on board. Let's get the kids teaching the teachers as the teachers teach the kids. Let's learn new efficiencies. But having been a volunteer doing a directory for this school district for 8 years, I still am going gray over, like, come on, people, there's an easier way. So please think outside the box. Please don't cut sports. Please don't cut out what's really essential to the kids. Having
That's time.
something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time. I'm very tired too. I'm Mary Hogue, and I am also here in advance about the potential for pay-to-play being an option. And I personally am hoping that that won't be where we end up, and I'm hearing from a lot of people that then they'll have to speak up as well. But I'm very glad that we ended up at the amount. Not that I'm happy that it was a proposed cut, but at least it's not as bad as it was. I hope we can figure out something. I just hope it's not pay to play. Thank you.
Anybody else? I see somebody.
Hi, I'm Nancy Tavalacci, 72 Stoneley Road in Fairfield. I would like to speak in support of the Nancy Hamlin Memorial and tell you a little bit about who Nancy was. I speak not only for myself and my children, but I've also forwarded by email to the board the names of 23 families who wanted their names to be mentioned as part of this letter. There are many great teachers, and then there are great teachers you never forget. And Nancy was the latter to so many students. She was a guiding mentor who made a profound impact in my daughter's lives and the lives of many children. Nancy taught my daughter Madeline in 5th grade, and she tutored my daughter Isabella, currently a 5th grader at North Stratfield. I felt so fortunate that we had a special connection with a wonderful teacher who was making a difference. Nancy communicated with my husband and I above and beyond her duties as a teacher, and I can tell you that she devoted hours of her personal time to my family alone. When Maddie moved on to 6th grade, Nancy continued to support her, giving her scholastic advice through visits and email. She did not want to take any money from us to tutor Isabella when she could have taken the going rate of $75 an hour. We felt special. It was at her funeral that I began to see that all around me were other families who shared their stories about how Nancy went above and beyond and how they too felt special and so fortunate to know her. Nancy was just being herself, and all I could think was how could one person be so helpful, so unselfish and giving to so many. While it's true Nancy Hanlon went above and beyond for many of her students, it is also important that I share that Nancy equally supported the parents. You could say that she tutored my husband and I right into the middle school years. We would like nothing more than to recognize Nancy by honoring her name and naming the North Stratfield 5th grade wing the Nancy L. Hanlon Wing. Thank you, and thank you for staying.
Thank you. Open board comment.
The indulgence of the board chair, I say please don't have any. No? Yes? Okay. Mr. Liu?
Really quick. The other day I was very lucky to be a guest presenter at the Arts in Action at the Fairfield Woods Middle School, which is an amazing program of arts for an entire day for the school to sort of enrich the kids and to give them an opportunity to see arts in a different way. And I just want to thank them for that opportunity and say what a great program it is. And they did an amazing job, the PTA there, as well as all of the teachers and people who are involved at the school. But also, I'd like to just sort of say to the other PTAs of the other middle schools, Tomlinson and Ludlow, that to give you encouragement to think of something similar to do, because I think arts is a really important part of our kids' education, and it was a fun and exciting day. Thank you.
You're right. I was invited actually to go with Mr. Tetro and meet some of the kids that were selected to do some of the artwork and those types of things there, and it's a great program.
Can I just jump in before? I know you all really want to hear from me at 11 o'clock, but...
Dr. Title has some things he'd like to say about the budget if anyone wants to stay.
Right. This is a reward for people who waited till 11 o'clock. We just started working this morning on some possible ways to meet this $250,000 reduction. These are going to be little to no impact, no staff, no programs. I think, in my view, non-controversial, will not include pay-to-play. And I'll have those out to you early next week. We'll put them on the website so that the board can wrap this up on the May 22nd meeting. I don't think you're going to see anything in there that's going to rile anything up. So if that saves you all from getting 100 emails, that the last minute was worth it.
Thank you. Mr. Convertito.
Just quickly, as long as we're on healthy school lunches, Sherman School's cafeteria opens tomorrow, so if any board members are around and want to go down for a healthy school lunch, it's been a long wait, but it's finally open.
Thank you. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Brand, seconded by Mr. Dwyer. Thank you very much. We're all in favor. Yay. Good night. I am starving.